about the vibe?
The vibe is
Is
infinite.
infinite.
Babe, what are you saying? What are you saying?
Not the mirror streak. Not the mirror streak. Welcome to Sisflix, the podcast where we won't judge you for talking through the movie. Sisflix are the movies you laugh at, yearn for, and overanalyze with your girls, significant others, and now us.
We are your hosts,
Paola
and Nadhya, two sisters and designers who discuss chick flicks we hate to love,
tropes we love to hate,
and all of the aesthetic choices in between. Join us as we break down our favorite movies together.
Hey, sister.
Hey, sister.
Happy spring/summer. We're right in the middle of it. And we are back on our movie bullshit after covering My Lady Jane for the past couple of weeks.
Hold for applause. Round of applause from everyone. Woo!
And honestly, what better follow-up to My Lady Jane than the movie we're going to cover today, which is another 16th century love story. And it's told by way of the 90s classic Ever After.
If you guys remember, when we put together earlier this year, late last year, a listener Instagram user survey polling you for what you wanted to hear from us, we got so many votes for Ever After. We compiled all of the findings and made a little list, and Ever After was like number 3 on the most requested. So here we are, giving the people what they want, talking about Ever After, finally.
Ever After is my second favorite take on a Cinderella story.
With the first being
Brandy Cinderella? Is that even a question?
Legend.
Hello? Brandy, Whitney Houston, Whoopi Goldberg. Hello?
The prince is Filipino. His mom is black. His father is
What?
white. I live. Like, nothing like that level of inclusivity.
Yo.
I live.
Colorblind casting before colorblind casting was even a thing. So...
And Brandy Cinderella actually came out 1 year before Ever After, this current version of Cinderella that we will be discussing.
I love how it's just Brandy Cinderella.
Yeah.
Like, she owns it.
It's Brandy's, yes.
So Ever After, officially known as Ever After, a Cinderella Story, is told like historical fiction. So I think that's my favorite thing about it. That's what draws me to the Cinderella so much. It features actual figures in history throughout the story. Even as a kid watching this, right? Very naive me, like, it made me wonder, like, oh wait, did this really happen? Was this the real life Cinderella? And then they like, did this inspire actual Cinderella? It's set during the reign of King Francis I in France, which, funnily enough, coming out of covering My Lady Jane, is a contemporary of Henry VIII, who we just talked a lot about. And King Francis, in real life, actually had a son named Henry that did end up inheriting the crown, and whose reign in France coincided with King Edward's reign in England. Love that we're covering this movie right after we finished up My Lady Jane. In this particular story, Prince Henry of France is the prince who falls in love for our protagonist, for our Cinderella. I've seen this movie this year. I've seen it already like 3 times because with all of the Bridgerton buzz around season 4, Benedict's season, I have reread An Offer from a Gentleman. It took me to watching this movie because for me, it's like the closest resemblance to the Cinderella story because Offer from a Gentleman is also another take on a Cinderella story. I feel like this adaptation, Ever After, really closely resembles the plot in An Offer from a Gentleman. Obviously, you have the stepmom and the 2 mean stepsisters, but then you have the one stepsister who's like way nicer than the other one. You have where like the love interests spend a lot of time together before he really knows who she is. And she has to kind of adapt a secret identity. And you even get the bit at the end where our female protagonist is imprisoned for a brief moment. So it's like, it kind of touches After reading An Offer from a Gentleman, I was like, I need to watch Ever After. And also, you have The Masquerade, which is such a key part of An Offer from a Gentleman, and it's a key part in this story as well. So, listen, if you are at the edge of your seat waiting for season 4 to come out, definitely watch Ever After, because I think it's a very good substitute till we get season 4 of Bridgerton
in 2026.
early 2026, girlies.
We've still got a good amount of time to wait till we get to Bridgerton season 4, till we get to my boy Benny D's Benedict's story.
Benedict down. Sorry.
Wow. Okay. You know what we have to discuss before that? Ever After, A Cinderella Story, released in 1998. This film stars Drew Barrymore as Danielle de Barbarac and Dougray Scott as Prince Henry of France, otherwise known as the Dauphin. Angelica Houston plays the evil stepmother, who in this adaptation is named Rodmilla de Ghent, who is a
Queen.
baroness. Megan Dodds plays Marguerite de Ghent, evil stepsister number 1. Exquisite performance there. Absolutely fucking unhinged. And Melanie Linsky, Queen, plays Jacqueline de Ghent, the not so evil stepsister number 2. This film was directed by Andy Tennant, who before this movie directed a lot of our favorite movies from when we were kids. Andy Tennant also directed It Takes Two with Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen.
I fucking love It Takes Two. I watched that movie so many times as a kid with Kirstie Alley. Oh my, I fucking love her. I saw her for the first time in Look Who's Talking.
Oh my God.
And I fucking love that movie. I watched that movie over and over. I watched it as an adult, and it is not appropriate, okay?
Yeah, no,
But here I was, and it was...
I cannot imagine that movie holding up. Like, I was thinking about this a lot over the weekend because I was visiting a friend and I went to a physical media store, a store that sells DVDs, VHS, cassette tapes. As streaming services get a little bit more crazy, they put stuff on the services and then they remove it. And then we're starting to realize slowly but surely there's no way for us to own anything anymore, right? One of the phenomena that we lived through, I feel like, as this kind of like late 80s, early to mid 90s millennial cohort, is that if you owned a handful of DVDs or a handful of VHS tapes, those movies imprinted on your brain.
You played them over and over.
You played them all the time because they were the movies that you had. Some people built up big collections. That's really cool. When we were little, we didn't have that big a collection. We had, a rotation of movies that we would watch. Most of them were Disney movies because we were kids. But like, Look Who's Talking, platinum, double platinum in our house. Titanic, the double VHS set.
Yes.
Double platinum, triple diamond. Like, there was no, like, it's crazy to me that that's just not something that happens anymore.
You know what? Watching the Titanic on VHS as many times as I wanted to, under no supervision whatsoever, as like a 10, 11-year-old,
Ooh.
That was my awakening. the hand imprint on the fucking car window. Not even like the portraiture, right? Like when he's, drawing her, draw me like one of your French girls. Not even that. I'm talking about sweaty car, hand streaking down the window.
Wild.
I think that's my lore. I think that's where it all started. That's what 15 years later has brought you Sis Fix podcast.
15 years later, it's like 20 years later. I was 5 and I used to kiss the little Leonardo DiCaprio face on the cover of the cassette, the VHS, just so we're all on the same page. That's a thing that used to happen.
That was the OG tall blonde boyfriend.
Wow. I don't want to talk about that. Parents, moderate your kids' content intake. You know what I mean? Because one day they're going to be on a podcast talking about how they used to fucking watch Titanic when they were 5.
And crush on Leonardo DiCaprio.
I mean, I wasn't old enough to date him then. I'm too old to date him now. So, like, it was never going to happen for me. That's brutal.
I'm done. You missed the window.
I missed the window. It was never going to happen for me. Yikes. Back to this movie that we're talking about. Director Andy Tennant also directed the movie Fools Rush In, starring Matthew Perry and Salma Hayek, and then went on to direct Sweet Home Alabama, starring Reese Witherspoon, and Hitch. This one also went double platinum in the Sisflix household, starring Will
Hitch?
Smith, starring Eva Mendes,
Yes.
starring Kevin James. Yo, the number of times I've seen that movie. Why? Because I'm pretty sure we stole it from Blockbuster. I think that's why we watched it so much.
I want to say in my lifetime, Hitch was the first rom-com with the black male lead that went mainstream.
Will Smith.
Mainstream. You had a black male lead and Latina love interest. Me at 17 seeing a Latina love interest in a mainstream media production that was a hit. Yes, I watched Hitch over and over. I watch it now. I kind of want to throw up a little bit. It's too cheesy, but adorable fucking rom-com. I can't wait for us to cover Hitch.
I was going to say, I think that would be super worthwhile for us to cover.
Yes, we do.
Anyway, again, we're getting sidetracked because
back to Ever After.
Back to Ever After. There's just so much to discuss.
Thank you, Andy Tennant.
Thank you, Andy Tennant.
I guess.
Back to the credits behind this movie, the one we're currently meant to be talking about, Ever After, Cinderella Story. The screenplay is by Susanna Grant, known for writing Erin Brockovich, which starred Julia Roberts, and also worked on Disney's Pocahontas, another just triple, quadruple platinum movie in our house.
These people just were responsible for my formative years, I think.
Yeah, honestly. Andy Tennant co-wrote, and Rick Parks, who worked on scripts throughout multiple Andy Tennant films, also co-wrote this screenplay. All right, the music editor was Graham Sutton, and we have Jeff Alexander and Simon Chamberlain, who are credited as orchestrators for the score for this movie. The costume design for this movie was done by Jenny Bevan, who's worked on dozens of period pieces, including a Sisflix fave, Sense and Sensibility from the 90s, directed by Ang Lee, which won her an Oscar nomination. Hello. And a movie we recently talked about in our last hit clips for our patrons. If you would like to hear that, find us on Patreon, pay $2. Morris, a 1980s period film with Hugh Grant, directed by the curmudgeonly, grumpy icon, James Ivory. That
such
movie,
a good movie.
That movie's stunning. And that movie also gained her an Oscar nomination. In total, she has received 12 Oscar nominations and has won 3 times, along with 4 BAFTAs. So, Jenny Bevan.
Legend out here
in these streets. All right, sister. So now that we've hit kind of like, the high points of the credits behind this movie, let's get into the scorecard. I'm going to ask you, is this a straight or queer story?
This is your classic straight fairy tale love story.
Devastatingly straight. Does this have source material?
I mean, of course, the source material is the famous folktale where a young servant girl eventually marries a prince and escapes her circumstances. The story we know as Cinderella. The earliest known variant of the story of Cinderella was the story of Rhodopis, recounted in Greece before 23 AD. It was a story about a Greek slave girl who marries the king of Egypt. The version that is most widely known is that of the French author Charles Perrault that was published in 1697 as Cendrillon. Anglicized, obviously, in English as Cinderella. And that's the version that we all grew up with. That's the version that inspired Disney's Cinderella 300 years later. And knowing kind of that background, I would say Ever After really is the first Cinderella that I'm aware of where you are acutely aware that it's taking place in France. Even though everybody's got a British accent, but we'll ignore that.
Guys, you know how this works, okay? First of all, there are the rules for Disney movies, right? The rules for Disney movies, the heroine is American. The evil people are all British. And then the people from the place have the accent of the place they're from. Okay, great. Real movies, it's gonna be like if you're foreign, like not American, but you're meant to be speaking like some other language, you're gonna be British with a few of the characters speaking in a very heavy bad version of that foreign language accent. And that's that. Like, I don't make the rules, other
And
people
they're
do.
usually the paupers or peasants or
Oh,
working
yeah.
class.
We have a couple characters in this movie where it is slightly giving like Luigi Mangione from My Lady Jane,
No,
right?
dead.
Where you get a little
Oh!
bit of "That's my sister." Like you get a little bit of that. So, just for those of us with ears that pick that up, it's fun. It's a good time. Yeah, as Bada said, everyone does have a British accent, and they accomplish that British accent to varying degrees of success. Drew
Yeah.
Barrymore, I'm talking to you. So,
Oh, I didn't realize how bad her accent was until I was older, until I was a more educated listener.
oh
As a
sure.
kid, as a teenager, didn't even notice. She sound British to me. Now, I'm like, dude, what is this accent?
She made a valiant effort. I think she was great in this movie. That accent is holding on by its fingertips. That accent, for
Oof,
dear life, it's clawing.
girl, no,
And we'll talk about
no.
it. So, sister, as we continue with the scorecard, tell me, is this story by a man or a woman?
Let's see. A dainty, docile servant girl is followed through a kingdom by a man she barely knew, and then her circumstances only improve by marrying said man. This story, from its very origin, is a story written by a man. But one of the things that we do love about Ever After is that it takes that narrative and modernizes it. The prince's purpose is not to rescue her or to take her out of her circumstances. No. In this story, she quite literally rescues herself. He simply falls in love with her for who she is, as she is, completely unchanged.
Is this movie by a man or a woman? It was directed by a man, Andy Tennant, and it was written by a blend, men and women. What is the trope?
Rags to riches, baby.
I ain't dumb. I got 99 problems and a bitch ain't one.
Hit me. Bars, Naja.
Bars. Not Nadja, Jay-Z, bars. The Cinderella story
Oh,
itself, as we all know, is its own trope, right? Like how many movies are there that are called a Cinderella story, another Cinderella story, another Cinderella story, again, done differently this time, I promise. The most
man.
recent iteration is 2025's Oscar-winning film Honora.
I would argue it's a significant twist on Pretty Woman, which is considered a take on a Cinderella story and one of my favorites.
I haven't watched Pretty Woman in a long time. And I think a lot of people had this experience. It was one of our mom's favorite movies when we were growing
Yeah.
up. So we watched it a lot at an age that wasn't appropriate for us to do that.
I did not understand the premise of Pretty
Nope.
Woman. I loved the movie.
Yep.
And then as an older teenager, I was like, oh.
There are transactions happening here of which I was not
Yes.
aware. Hmm.
Yep.
And rounding out that scorecard, we're getting into this small back of the book summary for the book movie plot. Paola, hit me.
The back of the book summary of this story, according to IMDb, is the brothers Grimm arrive at the home of the wealthy grande dame who speaks of the many legends surrounding the fable of the Cinder Girl before telling the true story of her ancestor.
Who speaks of the many legends across the many lands. All right, guys, it is time to get into this plot summary commentary. It's mostly commentary, it's a lot of summary. Sister,
Sisters, our movie, Ever After, A Cinderella Story, opens up on two men who we learn to be the Brothers Grimm, the two brothers responsible for the earliest published collection of folk tales. They are visiting a grande dame, played by Jean Moreau, who, by the looks of other crying visitors, seems to be on her deathbed. We don't get a name for her, but her staff refer to her as Your Majesty. She addresses the Brothers Grimm and compliments their work in their collection of children's stories, but then criticizes their interpretation of Cinderella. And while they protest and mock the French interpretation of Cinderella, which is very, make believe and fairy tale as we know, the Grande Dame pulls out a very Renaissance type slipper. The slipper has a glass heel. The brothers Grimm look at this and they're shocked as 10-year-old me, that Cinderella actually existed. And as they look over at a painting very closely resembling Da Vinci's La Scapigliata, Queen John Moreau explains that the woman in the painting and the owner of the slippers was Danielle de Barbrac. And she begins to tell her story, a story about a young girl who loved her father very much. And I love that they open up this story with that. Because at the center of this story is not a prince that she's in love with. It's how much this person's relationship with her father made her who she is and gave her the skills and the ideals to persevere and eventually escape her situation. And also, these ideals are what made the prince fall in love with her eventually.
Mm-hmm.
We cut to Danielle, where we meet her at 8 years old, getting dressed by one of the housekeepers in preparation for her father's arrival. They're all excited because he's coming back from his travels with a new wife, a baroness and her two daughters. We get a little bit of exposition as they're getting her dressed and comment on how Danielle's father has had to raise her on his own. So we know that her mother has not been around for a long time. We find out later that her mother died in childbirth. While she's getting put together, a friend comes knocking at Danielle's window, and it's Gustav, a little boy about her same age, maybe a neighbor. We don't exactly know, but that's her buddy. When he sees her, he seems surprised that she actually looks like a girl. So that tells us a bit about Danielle. She's not a girly girl. Danielle threatens to beat him up. That tells us a little bit more about Danielle. At the housekeeper's exasperation, she runs downstairs to chase this little boy down. So, what do we know? We know that Danielle's kind, she's strong willed, tough, and doesn't stick to gender norms. In my opinion, something that every 8-year-old should be. Outside, we see all the staff and laborers eagerly line up to wait for Auguste, Danielle's father. There's a lot of them, and they all seem really pleased to see him return. So that tells us the kind of person he is. Also, if you look at their attire, Auguste is in a velvet fur-lined cloak, and even some of his staff is wearing velvet and suede. So we know that Monsieur Auguste has got a little chunk of change. He arrives and immediately introduces his staff to his new bride, the Baroness Rodmilla de Gens and her two daughters. Now, something that always confused me throughout this movie was why was Rodmilla and her daughters considered courtiers and not Danielle? Embarrassingly, it took me well into the last couple of rewatches to realize that Rodmilla, as a widow herself, simply kept her title from her last marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And her daughters, by extension, also maintained that position. As a woman with a title, why would she marry Auguste? Well, he's a commoner, but as we see, he's a wealthy commoner and landowner. Her title that she's inherited from her husband as a widow can only get her so far. She needed a marriage that could provide her and her daughters money and comfort and therefore security. And then that helps us understand the rest of the movie because for some reason it always confused me. I'm like, why are they treating isn't she
Isn't she
a
a baroness?
baroness?
Literally. No, that I watched this movie for the first time a month ago with Paola at her house. I had never seen it before, and I thought the same thing. I was like,
Yo,
oh, is there like a
exactly.
side plot where they're like hiding the fact that Danielle's actually nobility? Like, but no, she's a commoner.
So yeah, I wanted to say that up top because that shit had me confused. So Baroness Rodmilla steps out of the carriage and takes a quick survey of this property. She seems pleased enough to call it absolutely charming. And right at this moment, Danielle comes running to her father, covered in what we hope is a lot of mud. But her father could not care less. He hugs his kid, kisses her, and compliments her on beating up her friend, who walks over covered in 10 times the amount of mud. The Baroness sees this, and she, however, could not be more disgusted. She remains friendly and introduces her daughters, who both bow in unison. One of her daughters is wearing a bluish green dress, and her other daughter is wearing a red dress. And this continues throughout the movie. this identifier for the two daughters and who they are. That night, Danielle and her father spend a little time together before bed where he hands her a gift from his travels, and it's a book titled Utopia.
So this book ends up contributing a lot to Danielle's characterization, right? Not only because it is this big important piece of media gifted to her by her father, it's obviously enriched Danielle's mind. She's very smart, she's very conscientious, and she's socially conscious. And that social consciousness really does go back to this specific book, Utopia by Thomas More. It's introduced at this part right in the beginning, but throughout the movie, her favorite book, and unfortunately, tiny spoiler alert, it's the last book given to her by her father before his death. There is just so much to kind of unravel with the significance of this book and why we can associate it with Danielle's character. So, according to Wikipedia, guys, the internet's encyclopedia, Utopia, which is the shortened version of a much longer Latin title that I will not embarrass myself by trying to pronounce, translated to, quote, a truly golden little book, not less beneficial than enjoyable, about how things should be in a state and about the new island utopia, end quote, is a work of fiction and socio-political satire by Thomas More, who was alive from 1478 to 1535, written in Latin and published in 1516. This book is a frame narrative primarily depicting a fictional island society and its religious, social, and political customs. Many aspects of More's description of Utopia are reminiscent of life in monasteries. So, in this book, just for like a very brief rundown, the perfect society is defined as one that has no private property at all. Open warehouses of goods and food available to all, men and women doing the same type of and same amount of work, and each citizen learning one of several trades in addition to consistent agriculture work that everyone must participate in. The workday is described as 6 hours long due to everyone's participation in the workforce for the good of the community, among other, social commentary that the book makes outside of like gender equity, finding worthiness and pleasure in life outside of one's occupation, learning a variety of trades to be more flexible and useful to your community and your society, as well as
Mhm.
exercising your body and mind. This book becomes her entire moral code. More so because it was the last book given to her by her father. So she like commits it to memory. Her political ideology throughout the movie, at least for a lot of the first half where some of these topics will come up, is like completely informed by her experience with this book. So
Mhm.
I just thought that was really interesting. The way that a utopia was defined by a political commentator in the 1500s.
Social services, everybody contributing equally to society.
Shared ownership? Because the good of
Oh
the
my
community
God.
is central to the good of the individual? I don't know about
Who?
that.
No rulers or billionaires? He did advocate for owning a slave, so it does have defects.
Oh, a text written in the 1500s is imperfect?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So there's some things we should take from it and some things we should not. So yes, thank you, sister, for that background on Utopia, which minus the slaves does sound like a utopia. She ends up treasuring this book through her adulthood. As Nadja said, this is the last thing she has that her father passed down to her or gave her, last gift from her dad. In this moment that he's given it to her, she asks him to read some of it with her, but then quickly remembers, oh no, you're a husband now. You're not going to have as much time for me anymore because now you got to dedicate some of your time to your new wife and family. To which he replies, yes, but I am a father first and forever. Oh,
I know. An Oscar for Best Father that dies 10 minutes into the movie goes
gosh darn
to
it.
Auguste.
And he asks her, what do you think of Radmilla and her daughters? What do you think? And she like genuinely happily says, yes, I like them very much. He's like, great, because I'm leaving for a while and you're gonna be spending a lot of time together. Wild decision, honestly. My guy, you just got married and you're leaving in a fortnight. He's hoping that in this fortnight, Danielle and Rodmilla and her daughters all become a happy family so he can go off and make money for Radmilla to live in comfort.
Mm-hmm.
The day of his departure arrives, and based on the side eye that the Baroness gives Danielle, she has not warmed up to her in the last fortnight. And Danielle's eyes sadly communicate that at 8 years old, she already understands where she stands with this woman. Seems like Dad's a bit oblivious to this, though. Something that makes me very sad in this scene is that Auguste turns to Danielle and says, I'm counting on you to show them the ropes. The Baroness isn't used to getting her hands dirty. This single sentence defines Danielle's experience for 90% of the movie. Auguste bids them farewell, mounts his horse, and starts to feel discomfort through his left arm and hand.
Oy.
Oh,
It's the bloody
sir.
cough. It's the drops of blood in a handkerchief.
Now we know he's toast. As he rides off, the household, including Danielle, all hold to their tradition of waiting for him to turn around and wave at the gate before walking inside, right? It's tradition. He has to make it to the gate and wave goodbye before we can walk back in the house.
Mm-hmm.
The Baroness could give two shits. She's like, fuck you and your traditions, and walks in with her girls anyway. This is where you're like, you know what? Fuck you,
You know
lady.
what? I wanted to give you a chance,
And you're done.
and the
You're
chance is
done.
gone.
Gone. You had one chance and you're done. However, unfortunately, Auguste does not make it to the gate. He falls off of his horse as he visibly experiences a heart attack, clutching to his chest, clutching to his arm, falls off his horse. Danielle and Radmilla both run to him. He looks up at Radmilla and then turns his head to look at Danielle, and with his dying breath, he tells Danielle that he loves her over and over until he can't speak anymore and dies. Radmilla sees this and is clearly taken aback. Imagine being mad that a father loves his daughter first and foremost. Like,
The character of the Baroness, like Radmilla Degent, she is waiting in the wings to just be picked up and put into a Spanish telenovela where she can have the full weight of karma brought onto her by, like, you know, La Rosa de Guadalupe or whatever. Like, because parents that do not put their kids first, a novela is gonna come for your ass and they're gonna make sure you feel it.
for Rodmilla, right? Maybe it's not that he loved his daughter more or not, but the fact that he didn't say it at all to her, and the moment where this happens, she looks at Danielle, and Angelica Houston played the nuance in that scene impeccably, because it's just like a split second of a look where she kind of looks at her and it's like, oh shit, and then continues grieving. And something that I noticed on the rewatch is that Rod Miller gets up and allows herself to be comforted by Maurice, Auguste's steward. And they literally hug each other through the end of this scene. Over this scene, we hear the Grand Dame narrate that it would be 10 years before another man would enter Danielle's life, a man who was still a boy in many, many ways, quote unquote. And that's when we cut to Prince Henry, played by Dougray Scott. And let me just say, I could not agree more. This man is a child. But I will say that Dougray Scott does a very good job of making this man endearing instead of annoying as shit. When we meet Prince Henry, everyone remain calm. Not Prince Henry of England, not Henry George Edward James Hanover Stuart Fox. No. When we meet Prince Henry, he is escaping the palace as his father walks through searching for him and rattling on about a treaty with Spain, which required Prince Henry to marry a Spanish princess. So now you can probably deduce that he's escaping because he does not want to be part of this treaty. On the rewatch, the mention of marrying a Spanish princess piqued my interest because I'm like, wait, hold on. In the 2015 Disney's retelling of Cinderella, right? Like the live action one with Lily James and one of my boys, Richard Madden, the prince was also to be engaged to a Spanish princess. I'm like, I wonder if there's a connection there. Well, funnily enough, King Francis, during the Italian War in the 1520s, was held captive in Spain and signed a treaty that they would release him in exchange for his sons, who were to be held hostage by Spain. I was like, Oh, that's kind of interesting how they kind of incorporated that he has to marry a Spanish princess for peace within their countries because it's not exactly what happened, but it's a take on what actually happened in history between France and Spain. Anyway, Prince Henry, this is what ADHD does. It's like, wait, what? I wonder if there's a connection here. Next thing you know, you're learning about
Yeah, that's why I went on a 10-minute rant about the fucking book Utopia. Like, yeah. If you're listening to us, you know this. This is not new to you.
Anyway, French Prince Henry apparently has no intention of being part of this treaty. He's out. We see him riding off in the night on his horse. He's done with these folks. The following morning, we see a fully grown 18-year-old Danielle waking up by the fire. And what does she have in her hands? She is holding on to the book Utopia that her father last gave her 10 years prior at this point. She heads out early to tend to the farm and do her chores, feeds the animals, pick apples. As she's going about her chores, she sees this man in a cape galloping off in her father's horse. And this woman, with the arm of the future Pedro Martinez,
I'm dead.
throws an apple and knocks this man right off of his horse.
Danielle is like you'll find throughout the movie, she's like low key an X-Men. Like, I don't know what they've done, I don't know what they fed people back then other than like disease. I don't know what they did, but the bitch is strong as fuck. She's got endurance. She's out here like running marathons. She's out here fucking throwing game-winning pitches. Like, there's nothing she can't do.
As we learn, she practically has to kind of run this farm on her own.
Mm-hmm.
With her 100-mile-an-hour pitch, she quite literally knocks this man right off of his horse. As he gets up, she notices there's a royal seal on his clothes and she drops to her knees, realizing she has just knocked out the Prince of France. She apologizes profusely, offers him a better, much younger horse. He refuses and says all that he wants is to be free of his gilded cage. That's a weird thing to say to a commoner who might be a servant, but okay. He proceeds to take some gilded coins and literally sprinkle them in front of her as payment for her silence, to not say anything. At first, I'm like offended. Like, how dare he just throw money at her? Like, does he not know that's Danielle de Barbrac? But then Danielle grabs the coins, runs inside to tell Paulette and Louise, the two women of her staff that we saw in the beginning of the movie, helping her into her dress, that she will be able to bring home Maurice. We learn that he was sold by the Baroness to pay her fucking taxes. Bitch! Just
Yeah.
a few scenes ago, we saw Maurice comforting her after the death of Auguste, and she has degraded him to indentured servitude. I think that speaks to the degradation of her humanity. We see her love Auguste, who treats his staff as people, and it's almost like the longer he's not been present, the more she loses that connection with him and kind of that relationship with the people close to him, right? Through the end of the movie, where she tries to disconnect herself completely from Danielle, too. We cut to her and they're fucking having breakfast. By the way we see Marguerite speaking to Paulette, we can deduce that she's learned quite a lot from her mother, the Baroness. The three of them, the Baroness and her daughters, are sitting for breakfast, waiting for Danielle to come and serve them. As Danielle enters the room with breakfast and greets everyone, you notice Jacqueline is the only one who even acknowledges her and returns her greeting. And you'll also notice that Jacqueline and Danielle are wearing the same color, like a kind of like a dark green.
Mm-hmm.
And they're also wearing their hair in the same hairstyle.
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of the story, the movie, signaling that they are kind of like each other. The story signaling that eventually Jacqueline becomes Danielle's ally. Meanwhile, Marguerite is wearing red, which is the color she wears throughout this movie.
Red and green are opposite colors to each other. You can already assume that aside from the Baroness, she's going to be the main antagonist for Danielle. Just because she
Exactly.
takes pleasure in it. The Baroness maybe is able to reason, find some shred of reason in why she treats Danielle the way she does, but Marguerite does it for fun.
And also in this scene, the Baroness Rodmilla and Marguerite are also wearing similar hairstyles. So that's another way that the story is letting us know these two are like each other. We turn to Prince Henry, who's still out on the lam, riding off in Danielle's father's horse. And he comes across a wagon being raided by highwaymen. It's not a highway yet, it's like a dirt path, but we still call them highwaymen. And there's an old man yelling for help. All his shit's being stolen. Prince Henry sees this and he's like, fuck. The old man pleads with him, looks at him in despair, and tells him, that painting is my life. Henry turns out to be a hero and helps save the man's painting. So that gives us a little tidbit about Henry. He might be nice. When he returns the painting back to this old man, we all realize the painting turns out to be the Mona Lisa, and the old man is none other than Leonardo da Vinci.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. Like, when this happened in the movie, I'm sitting there, I'm watching with Paola. I paused it and I turned to her and I was like,
It's like,
what?
what? And I'm like, Nadja, stick with me. Stick with me. It's
Okay.
gonna be good. Stick with me, okay? There's connections here, Nadja. So, this detail of the story very much tracks with the time period. King Francis I, who was a known patron of the arts, had invited Leonardo da Vinci to visit and stay in France in the early 1500s. He brought with him a lot of his great works, including the Mona Lisa, which, after da Vinci's death, did remain in France till this very day, where it sits at the Louvre in Paris, France. Henry, realizing that he's speaking to the Leonardo da Vinci, tells him, Sir, Signore, you are the very founder of forward thinking, and has one favor to ask him, and that is if he could help him bring his father into the 16th century so that he'll perhaps change his mind about his arranged marriage. What? You have Da Vinci in front of you, and that's what you're asking him? Okay. Meanwhile, that afternoon, while the Baroness and her daughters are shopping in town, you would never think they were selling people to pay debts with them out here shopping in town and buying baroches.
Baroches.
While they're doing that, Danielle is visiting Gustav, who now we see is an artist's apprentice and is in what seems to be the art studio. She is telling Gustav her plans to try to buy back Maurice. But first, she has to look like a noblewoman. So she starts to change into a dress that's hanging in this room. Now, this is another portion of the story that I was always a little confused about. I would always like, whose dress is this? Like, where are they changing?
I kind of thought it was like her mother's dress. Like, she had found an old dress somewhere in her home and like.
Yeah. I thought it was one of the sisters' dresses or something. I always kind of attributed to that Gustav's visiting while the girls are out in town. She's home and she puts on one of these dresses. On my latest watch, I realized no, they're in an art studio that's in the town. And in this art studio, there's a portrait by the window. It's behind Danielle. And it's a portrait of a woman wearing the exact dress. So this is probably a dress the woman who's getting her portrait painted, she's brought with her. And every time she comes in for a session, she puts on the dress. And therefore, that's why it's at the studio. So this is the dress that Danielle changes into. Gustav lends it to her very illegally for Danielle to be able to go into town and pretend to be a courtier. Danielle, on her own, no separate pieces or help needed for laces or any of that.
Literally, I thought the same thing. I thought the same thing.
Like, oh wow, so she just laced herself up. Got it.
It's 76 pieces. I was like, she didn't need Gustav's help at all. You mean these garments that are specifically designed so that a woman needs a lady's maid to help her put them on, especially the higher up she is in class or rank? Are you joking? The dress is beautiful, but I was like, come on, girl.
But we are going to look past that. This is the dress Danielle changes into. And there is one very sweet moment where she steps out from the dressing screen and Gustav kind of looks at her and encourages her, tells her to hold her head up high. not to feel any shame. And then he goes, we must do something with that hair. Girl. Okay,
Okay,
Gustav.
Gustav.
The other ladies return home just in time to greet none other than Prince Henry, who has come back to return the horse he borrowed, quote unquote, that morning. We'll ignore that the only reason he's returning the horse is because his escape was thwarted. Anyway, now the Baroness, that didn't know anything about any horse being taken, and she especially didn't know the detail about him getting fucking rocked in the face. And he still has the mark to prove it, the chichong. As the Baroness, Radmilla, speaks to the prince, Marguerite and Jacqueline stumble out of the house to be presented to the prince. Marguerite is sporting her brand new brooch she got from town earlier. It fulfills its job because the prince looks at her and compliments her. Meanwhile, poor Jacqueline is wearing a feather. She puts a feather in her hair. And when she hears Marguerite get complimented on her brooch, that's on her chest, by the way, strategically placed, Jacqueline grabs the feather and then puts it in her bosom.
It's really funny.
Oh, Jacqueline. And another thing that this Cinderella retelling does a bit differently is that there is clear favoritism between Rodmilla's daughters, right? I feel like the Cinderella we grew up with, specifically the Disney version, right? She wants the prince to marry one of her daughters. Here, Rodmilla has a clear favorite to who she wants the prince to marry, and that is Marguerite. She focuses her money and her attention on her while almost neglecting Jacqueline. Meanwhile, near the palace, Danielle, in this dress that she's borrowed, is easily passing for a noblewoman.
And I want to talk a little bit about the way that Drew Barrymore has been styled so far. So, like, she's supposed to be like a peasant girl, right? Like, all of her dresses have been very simple. Her hair is styled in a really simple way with no elaborate hair pieces or ties or clips. She's always a little bit dirty. But the way that they decide to apply this little bit of dirt, I'm sorry, it drove me crazy as I was
It's
watching it.
always a smudge on her face.
Yes,
Oh.
her face is always smudged, which I know is the point. It just looks like misplaced bronzer. You know what I'm saying? I wish that the color of it was like a little bit different so that you could distinguish it more as dirt or soot, right? Because it's Cinderella, right? Cinders, soot, ashes. So you could distinguish that a little bit more because it literally is like she's gotten like a weirdly placed amount of sun. Like that's what how I felt for the first few minutes of watching her. And then I was like, oh, that's dirt. Like, okay.
But for this particular scene, Gustav has helped clean her face off. So she comes off as a noblewoman. So it's the first time we see Danielle with like a clean face.
Mm-hmm.
She sees that Maurice is in a carriage full of prisoners that is starting to head out. And she tries to convince the driver of this carriage to let her pay him to free Maurice.
Mm-hmm.
This driver's like, bitch, I got nothing to do with these prisoners. I'm just driving them, and starts to go back and forth arguing with Danielle. Prince Henry happens to be returning to the palace, overhears everything, and confronts the driver for disrespecting a lady. Danielle jumps in and explains that her servant that she's trying to free is no thief, and those who are thieves cannot help themselves. Intrigued, the prince asks Danielle to further explain what she means by this. She continues, if you suffer your people to be ill-educated and their manners to be corrupted, what else is to be concluded, sire, but that you first make thieves and then punish them?
Bars.
Mm.
Bars.
And this is a direct quote by Thomas More from the book Utopia. This impresses the prince, and by his demands, Maurice is released to Danielle. She thanks him and tries to walk away immediately, right? Before anybody fucking notices that this is a scam. But of course, it couldn't be that fucking easy. The prince follows her to ask her who she is, where she's staying, who's her cousin, and she obviously cannot provide any honest answer or information to any of those questions. We have this prince who surely has never been refused by any woman. He pretty much says that he will do whatever it takes to learn who she is. Because anyone who can quote Thomas More is well worth the effort. Now, this catches Danielle's attention because she's like, hold on, you've read Utopia too? Like a prince? What interest would a prince have in this type of literature? But then he fucks it all up by saying that it's a dull book and, quote, the plight of the everyday rustic bores him.
Cool.
Oh, excuse me,
Cool.
sir.
Awesome.
So Danielle's like, so I guess you've never really spoken to poor people, huh? Alrighty then. And he's like, well, naturally, of course not. I'm a prince. And Danielle, fully unimpressed, excuses herself and continues to walk past him, while saying there is nothing natural about dismissing peasants, for the country itself stands because of quote unquote everyday rustics, as he called them, and they demand the respect. Whoo, girl, yes. And this further intrigues him, and he begs again for her name. And so Danielle finally resigns herself to give him a name. The only name I can leave you with is Comtesse Nicole de Lancre. And then she continues to walk past him. Back home, Danielle arrives with Maurice in what, for me, is one of the most emotional scenes in the movie, where Paulette and Louise see him arrive and run to give him a hug. And it's like a very emotional reunion as Paulette, Louise, Danielle, and Maurice are all hugging. He's kissing all of them. He's kissing his wife. They're crying. I'm watching this, even as a young kid, this scene made me cry.
Mhm.
However, the joy, of course, in this household is short lived as the Baroness yanks Danielle by the ears for not informing them about the prince and the horse situation. But Rodmilla says, thanks to Marguerite's exceptional performance, that he might be returning to call upon Marguerite, right? And informs Danielle that she must work extra hard to make sure that the manor is spotless for when he does return to call on Marguerite. Back at the palace, after a heated argument where King Francis threatens to disown him and simply just live forever. So the relationship between Henry and his dad remains contentious. However, you can tell he's a mama's boy because he goes off on a walk with his mom where he begins to ask her if she knows anybody by the name of Nicole de Lancre. His mother's like, huh, why? And just as she's asking for these details, King Francis comes back out to inform Henry that he wants to make a compromise. He's decided that he's going to throw a masked ball in honor of Signore da Vinci.
Signore.
His compromise is that if Prince Henry is stuck on wanting to find love
Prince Henry of England?
of England,
Not this time.
No, unfortunately not. That if he's stuck on wanting to find love, he must choose someone to marry by the night of the ball and announce who that person will be at midnight. And if he doesn't find anyone, King Francis will choose for him. And obviously, the default is
Spain.
Princess of Spain. The ball is in 5 days.
So we all know you can reasonably expect someone to fall in love in that amount of time.
The queen turns to her son and says, choose wisely, Henry. Divorce is only something they do in England.
Divorce and beheading. Divorce and murder.
Ooh. When we cut to the next scene, the invitations for the ball have gone out, and the invitation says, Their Majesties Lord Chamberlain cordially invites you to a mosque in honor of Signor Leonardo da Vinci on the eve of the Feast of St. Jude. Allow me to go down another rabbit hole here for just a little bit, just a second. I looked up, hey, when is the eve of the Feast of St. Jude? Is that an actual date? Yep. The Feast of St. Jude is celebrated on the 28th of October.
Ooh.
So, two things I find funny about the date of choice. First thing being the obvious thing, the date of this feast being so close to the Celtic pagan traditions of Halloween, which obviously have nothing to do with Christianity in the slightest. And also reason why it's a masquerade.
It just makes me want to sing Phantom of the Opera.
Also, St. Jude is known as the patron saint of lost causes. And that's really some shade that the king threw his son. I'm gonna throw your ball, okay, on the eve of the patron saint of lost causes, because I'm fucking done with your ass. When the Baroness Rodmiller receives this invitation from the royal page, she pays him a little extra change for any information that he might have on the prince and his whereabouts. And he gladly obliges. He informs her that the prince's engagement to the princess of Spain has been canceled and that he must find the bride before the ball and that he's going to be playing tennis the following day at noon. I mean, he just spills all the tea. Rodmilla gives him the eye and promises a new arrangement once her daughter becomes queen. Oh, she's making some promises to this royal page. Rodmilla gets right to work to help her girls find dresses within their wardrobes for this ball. But after they can't find anything to their satisfaction, Rodmilla has an idea and goes looking in an old trunk. And out of this old trunk, she pulls out this beautifully beaded white dress with white and silver slippers. And you recognize the slippers as the ones that the Grand Dame at the beginning of the movie showed the brothers Grimm. Rodmilla explains to Marguerite and Jacqueline that the dress was meant for Danielle as her dowry for when she gets married. And she says this mockingly as she rolls her eyes, right? And Marguerite chimes in, Cinderella? Married to who? The chimney sweep? Right at this moment, Danielle walks in and finds them holding up her mother's dress and slippers. Rodmilla tries to lie and says, they were just airing it out for her so that she can join them to the ball. And Danielle's so delighted that she's invited to this ball that she doesn't even care they're holding up her mother's dress. You can just see the yearn for acceptance so clearly in her face and in her voice. It's fucking infuriating. Then Rodmilla adds as a prerequisite that as long as she minds her manners and does all her chores, she could go. That afternoon, Henry is by the river with Leonardo da Vinci. In a stream of consciousness, he asks Da Vinci if he believes there's only one perfect mate. And if there is, how do you find them? And if you find them, how do you know it's them? And what if you think it's one person, but it's really another person? What if that person gets struck by lightning? Then what happens? And Da Vinci's just like, bruh, I don't have all the answers. I don't know.
I'm just some guy who paints.
The only thing Da Vinci can offer him is you cannot leave everything to fate. She's got shit to do. Sometimes you must give her a hand. So I like that. I like that line from Da Vinci. And as this is going on, Da Vinci is pulling out some boat shoes, not Sperry's, wooden boat shaped things that attach to your feet, because his intent is to try to float on water, kind of like a boat floats on water, as he's standing on this apparatus that he has created. And I think it's important to say this is an actual design found within Da Vinci's sketches. At the other side of this river, we see Danielle walking along with her pig. She decides, I'm walking by the river and I look gross. I'm going to bathe in the river. Good for you, girl. And we got this beautiful shot of her floating in the water in her chemise when suddenly, coming from the side of the screen, we see Da Vinci walking on water with his boat shoes. And he looks straight down at her and says, "It looks like rain," and startles the shit out of poor Danielle, who screams at the top of her lungs. Henry follows the scream and runs to help Da Vinci. Da Vinci, in a very funny line, says, he'll be leaving the walking on water to the Son of God. But fortunately, he has tripped over an angel. And Henry realizes that angel happens to be the woman he knows as the Comtesse Nicole de Lancre. He helps her out of the water, and these two end up sitting by the bank of the river and chatting. Like, how fucking sweet.
Also, I'm sorry. He helps her out of the water, and she's in like a dress that goes translucent because she's wet. So he covers her with his velvet cloak, which he drapes over her shoulders while she's still in the water.
While she's still in the water. And it gets wet.
The most waterlogged velvet cloak on earth. Now Danielle's carrying 30 pounds
of wet velvet. Yes, it's true. I always notice that when
Drives
I'm
me
watching
nuts.
this scene. And I'm just like, all right, I'm going to ignore this because this is a cute moment. All right, fine. So they end up sitting by the edge of this river and he asks her about her attendants. Where are your attendants, madam? You're by yourself. And mind you, he's a prince who's also out and about by himself. He doesn't have any attendants with him either. She lies and says that she decided to give her attendants a day off. And he goes, a day off? From what? Life? And she gracefully, undeservingly so, she gracefully replies, don't you tire of having people wait on you all the time? And he's like, sure, but like their servants is like what they do. And Danielle's like, you know what? You can fuck right off. I'm leaving. And he can't take that she gets mad at him. And he starts to question her and question her ideals. Like, you spout the ideals of a utopian society, yet you live the life of a courtier. And she snaps back that the contradiction is him who owns all the land that there is to own and yet has never taken pride in working that land. Then she continues to say, you have everything and still the world holds no joy. And he looks at her and asks, how do you manage to live each day with this kind of passion? They end up both laughing at themselves and each other for how easily they get each other riled up. Da Vinci is on the sidelines and he's just looking over with like these two big emoji eyes on his face. And he's just about to invite Danielle to fly a kite when Danielle hears Jacqueline calling out for her and she rushes off. As she's rushing off, the prince is trying to yell to invite her to his tennis match, but she doesn't hear him. She's out. She doesn't get the invitation. That night at dinner, back at the manor, Radmilla and her girls are sitting for dinner as Danielle and the rest of the staff are all standing at the perimeters of the room. Radmilla starts to ask the staff about the missing candlesticks. And Marguerite brings up that there's also a missing painting. And Radmilla looks at the servants and threatens to garnish their wages if none of those items are found. And then further threatens them that she's going to ship them off to the Americas with all the other thieves. Mind you, she's very convinced they're thieves, but they're still working there. Sure. Maybe because she's the fucking thief. Anyway. At the mention of the thieves, Jacqueline mentions the news that has been circulating that the prince has asked for all the men who were imprisoned to be released and is changing the law to state that any man who sails must be compensated. And Danielle cannot contain her surprise and her excitement because she knows that she's influenced this idea. Marguerite then brings up some contest that everyone has been talking about and that everyone is trying to figure out who she is because apparently the prince was falling all over her. Paulette and Louise glance over at Danielle, who can't help but blush. The next day, we catch up with the prince at his aforementioned tennis match. At this match, there happens to be dozens and dozens of women solely to watch the prince and his magnificent codpiece.
Okay.
Sir, what you got in there? Did he pick out the extra large one like Dudley did? At this match, I honestly couldn't imagine Danielle at this match with all these women quite literally like drooling over this man. Like, I couldn't see it. She would be out. Marguerite, however, manages to catch the prince's attention by somehow getting her hands on the tennis ball and passing it over to Prince Henry to start the game. And he's like, oh, you look well. And she tells him, you're welcome to look.
Jesus.
Marguerite. Hey. I'm not mad at that response. I respect the 16th century game right there. While this match is going on, while Henry's codpiece is waving everywhere, Danielle, along with Louise and Paulette, have a stand set up in town to sell some of the farm's harvest. As they're in this stand, a creepy man by the name of Monsieur Le Pew walks up on them and calls Danielle by her full government name. It's so gross. It's so gross and creepy with this when this man walks up on them. Like,
That
his
actor
face.
deserved awards for that. Ugh.
Goodness, his face. And he looks at Danielle and then he's like, "Your soil is the best in the province, and yet so poorly tended." Like this very creepy, like gross double entendre, like coming from this person twice her age, this man, right? And then proceeds with, "I'm very well endowed."
Ugh.
Oh, God, girl. Because of the size of his estate. He's like, he's so gross and creepy. And he tells her, "You need a wealthy benefactor, and I need a young lady with spirit." And at her refusal, he adds that his generosity is the only reason that their farm still exists. And then he turns and leaves. And you're like, what the hell? The hell does that mean? And they're kind of like, what the hell does that mean? And they just glare at this man as he walks away. Like, what the fuck is he talking about? But who's also walking in town? Marguerite and the fucking prince. As I'm watching this, even at young me, I'm like irked to see them walking together. They're talking, and he like stops and feeds her chocolate in la calle in front of everyone. This scene is so cringy. He's feeding her the chocolate in public. She like leans in, opens her mouth. He feeds her the chocolate, and then
His
she's closing her
fingers
eyes.
touch her lips. His
Just like,
doo-doo 16th century fingers.
I'm like, this isn't appropriate. And she closes her eyes and she's like, positively sinful. Ma'am, this scene is positively sinful. I could have done without it. Anyway, as they continue to walk, Margarita's like, "Oh, let me show you my servants." And he's like, "I would love to meet them." What? Where do they do this at? When they arrive to their stand, Marguerite's like, "Here's my servants." And he meets Paulette and Louise, and he's very delighted to meet the servants that run their stand. Danielle is bent down picking up a chicken and doesn't see that he has walked up to the stand. She gets up, sees him standing there, screams at the top of her lungs, and lets the chicken go and it flies in his face. As he stumbles backwards, she runs away, kind of unnoticed. He saw her, didn't see her. He doesn't know what happened. The chicken is in his face. He asks Paulette and Louise, like, "Hold on, is it just you two? Was there another person here?" And I think it's Louise who goes, "No, sir, just us and the chicken." It's so funny. That night, as Danielle is setting the fire for Radmilla, Radmilla is going on about the possibilities of this engagement between the prince and Marguerite. And at one point, she looks at Danielle for a moment and looks like to be reflecting on some of her comments to Danielle over the past couple of days, where she's been pretty harsh to her. And she says, "My mother was hard on me too." And I found that super interesting because it's almost like she accidentally refers to herself, even in theory, by that comment, as Danielle's mother, almost justifying that that's why she's hard on her. It's the closest thing Rodmilla does throughout this movie that almost insinuates her awareness of being Danielle's mother or mother figure. She walks over to Danielle and sits in front of her so that Danielle would brush her hair, as you would do to a lady's maid. Radmilla continues that her mother would make her wash her face 20 times a day and she would still not find her clean enough. She seems to have this experience where she was never good enough for her mother. But she goes on to say that she was grateful to her because it made her strive for more. And now, because of this trauma that her mother's put her through, she's a baroness. Now I'm thinking, as I'm hearing this, is she saying this to justify her treatment of Danielle? Like, I'm doing this so that you strive to be a better person? What I find funny about this is that the daughter that she's trying to make queen has never received an ounce of that type of treatment from her. There's so much nuance in this scene, and it's done beautifully by Angelica Houston. Like, I'm even asking myself in this scene, like, is she maybe resenting her mother a bit, right? And she feels like she overcame her to be in the position that she is now as a baroness. She grabs Danielle's hand and brings her down to her eye level and looks at her and tells her that it's a pity that Danielle never actually knew her mother, that there must be something of her mother that she carries with her. And you get this moment where you see Radmilla almost pitying Danielle a little bit, or like feeling bad for her. And Danielle, in this moment, all she expresses that she wishes she would have known what she looked like. What that means to me, that Danielle doesn't know what her mother looks like, is that there's not even a portrait of her mother anywhere, not even a sketch. Her mother was never even able to have a portrait painted of herself. And I'm coming to that realization as I'm watching the scene. And that made me think about how we started off this movie by seeing a portrait of Danielle that was passed down through generations. Something that Danielle, at this very point of her life, could not have ever imagined. And that portrait turns out to be kind of her legacy that gets passed down through her family. Like, I don't know. I thought about that and I was just like, that's so crazy. Like, Rodmilla is talking about how she endured her mother's treatment to arrive where she's at. And here we have Danielle, who we know far exceeded the legacy Rodmilla herself is fantasizing about for her daughter. After Danielle shares this longing to know like what her mother looked like, Radmilla says, "Well, we must never feel sorry for ourselves, must we?" She doesn't say this like sweetly. She doesn't say it as like we gotta be positive, positive thinking. Because that's what most people, oh, we're not gonna feel sorry for ourselves. We're gonna work hard and we're gonna do better. Blah, blah, blah. She doesn't say it with that intent. She says it in a very patronizing tone. And then she adds, no matter how bad things get, they can always get worse. She does continue to deliver that again in a very patronizing way. But it made me think about what Rodmilla went through herself. If you think about Rodmilla's story, she lost her husband and the father of her girls, as well as her home, remarried in hopes of establishing another home and family again, only to lose that husband too. This doesn't justify any of her bullshit, but it's her own version of no matter how bad things get, they can always get worse.
Hmm.
That was her lived experience. Then she looks at Danielle a bit longer and tells her that she sees so much of her father in her. Listen, as a previous daddy's girl, I can relate to the way Danielle's face brightens up when she hears this, right? Her father is the best person she ever knew. How could she not see that as a compliment? And at this point, Rodmilla is teary eyed and with tears in her eyes adds, sometimes I can almost see him looking out through your eyes. And you can see Rodmilla contemplate on her face. And then almost like she shakes it out. Literally, just with like the twitch of an eyebrow, you can see her shake it out. Angelica Houston is so good in this scene. She does the slightest shake of her head and it's so effective. Radmilla shakes back into herself and is like, yeah, well, your features are so very masculine. And to be raised by a man, no wonder you're built for hard labor. Goodness gracious. That shit fucking pissed me off. I mean, and Danielle obviously used to the shade from Rodmilla, and she kind of just brushes it off and asks Rodmilla if she ever loved her father. And Rodmilla just looks at her and answers, I barely knew him. And with her fucking little pursed lips, waves off Danielle and tells her to go away. Angelica Houston again is exquisite in this scene. She does really well with the whole mixed feelings and nuance in her face. I think here you can definitely see that she most likely loved Auguste and she possibly resents Danielle because he could never love Radmilla the way that he loved his daughter. And also, I would add that not only does she resent Danielle for holding that affection, she resents him for making her fall in love with him and having her follow him to this countryside that she's unfamiliar with, only for him to die and leave her behind in this environment that she doesn't know how to navigate, and takes that out on Danielle, who she just said reminds her so much of him.
Mhm. That's a pretty solid halfway mark at this movie. So, as we keep moving through the action, everything's kind of starting to build up, right? We've got this sentimental moment between Rodmilla and Danielle. Things are kind of building up with the prince in a weird way. There's this strange predator on the horizon for Danielle as well. So, where's everything going to go? Well, it's a Cinderella story. Luckily, we already know where it's going to go. But how does it get there? That's the question we're asking ourselves. So,
That is the question.
the following morning, after this conversation between Rodmilla and Danielle, Maurice, who was saved by Danielle, finds a kite stuck in a tree. We know this as Da Vinci's kite that we saw earlier in the movie. From there, we cut to Danielle and Gustave in an open field surrounded by rounded, tall bales of hay as Danielle runs around flying this kite. Gustave is teasing Danielle about the prince, like, ooh, I bet you like him. And she insists that she doesn't and hopes that he and Marguerite get married so that Marguerite moves out of her childhood home/manor and she's able to run it herself. As Danielle is distracted by the kite, Gustave sees that the prince and his main guard, whose name is Laurent, are on
Mhm.
horseback rapidly approaching them. He tells Danielle that she's finally got her chance to talk to the prince and clear things up, and Danielle hides behind an incredibly conveniently placed hay bale, even as the kite continues flying, giving her location away. The way this shot is framed is really interesting and like really satisfying. Like there's a point where Gustav is off to the left of the screen, significantly closer to the camera. We see his body from like the knees or like the mid thigh up, while what you see behind him are the hay bales kind of scattered across this landscape and Danielle running around as this just tiny figure in the depth behind him, which is really, really interesting.
When I think about this scene, I think of like it's this moment where you see Danielle feeling like absolutely free. The first time being when she was swimming in the river before she realized that there were people around.
Mhm. And I think part of that has to do with spending time with Gustav, right? Like her childhood friend who's known her since
Mhm.
before all of the unfortunate things have happened. So,
And knew her dad.
and knew her dad and knows what she's grieving and what she's missing. In the moment, Gustav puts down his paints and brushes as the prince approaches, asking if he has seen Da Vinci. Gustav says no. The prince points out the kite. He's like, hey, that's Da Vinci's kite, his flying machine, flying from behind a hay bale, and Danielle releases it so as to not draw any more attention to herself. Gustave says it was a gift to him from the Comtesse de Lancret, and the prince's entire demeanor changes. He asks Gustave if he knows where the Comtesse lives and how to find her. And Danielle, meanwhile, is groaning behind this hay bale. She is panicking. Gustave responds that she's staying with her cousin, the Baroness de Ghent, and happens to be at the manor, fully alone, right now, as we speak.
Gustav.
Gustave is a messy bitch who lives for drama. So
He's the right hand man.
he's the
He knows what he's
wingman.
doing.
So the prince
Gustav.
immediately is like, dope, amazing. Thank you so much. Oh, are you working on that painting? Cool, I like it. I'm gonna take off and go to the Baroness's house. Danielle comes out once the prince has departed. He's on horseback, by the way. Cool. I'm just clarifying that. Danielle comes out from behind one of these hay bales and yells at Gustave, calling him a snake for being so sneaky. And she said, he's headed towards my house. And Gustave's like, bitch, I suggest you run. Hoof it. Get over there. Danielle smirks at Gustave, betraying the fact that she's actually excited to see the prince, and runs off.
An Olympian speed run.
Danielle, also known as Usain Bolt, runs from this field to the manor where she somehow cleans herself up, dresses in fancy, like rich people clothing, and is able to answer the door for the prince, all before the prince, who I will repeat, is on horseback, arrives.
Maybe she knew a shortcut. The prince is on horseback. Maybe he's going like the common path or
And they
route.
didn't interact at all. He never came
He takes
across
the
her.
highway. She went like a back way. She knew a shortcut and she cut through.
Cool. Danielle, again, fully dressed, completely transformed. In the time it took a horse to get from the field she was at to her house, answers the door to the manor when the prince arrives. She's slightly out of breath, but nothing else is amiss. And I love her dress in this scene and the accessory
Mhm.
that she's wearing on her head. She has this like really gorgeous pale blue color on, something that we've heard earlier in the movie from Marguerite as she's like looking through Danielle's mother's wedding dress. Marguerite's like, I need something new to wear to the ball. Blue is the prince's favorite color, but that just means that everyone is going to be wearing it. I need to stand out. I need to be different. Danielle doesn't know this because she's just a girl. So she is wearing this gorgeous blue gown that just ends up being the prince's favorite color, which I think is very sweet. It looks great on her. The head accessory that she's wearing is covering the top part of her head. It's doing like a 2015 you're wearing a hippie headband around your head over the front of your
Mhm.
forehead rather than like around your head behind your ears because you're like going to a music festival later. Like it's giving that, but it is like very refined with jewels. The prince asks why she didn't attend church, and she says that she maintains her faith in private. He mentions that he's not at church because of his father's proclamation about him choosing a wife. All the ladies are out here.
All the ladies in the place with style and grace are all over the prince's new.
That mwah, beautiful, beautiful reference, beautiful conclusion. I love that. 10 out of 10. Behind Danielle, a view inside the manor shows us the two elderly female servants that are like super cariñosa with her and love her. They are literally slumped over the staircase because they're sweating and winded after helping her get dressed so quickly before the prince arrived.
It's so funny.
The prince invites Danielle to the Franciscan monastery to go look at their books. Da Vinci was supposed to go with him, but is unfortunately nowhere to be found. Danielle kind of starts to panic because she sees the Baroness's carriage slowly approaching down the drive. The long drive, right? Where we previously saw her father die. Regarding Danielle's love of books, she tells the prince, quote, "It's not fair that you know my weakness and I don't know any of yours," unquote. And he very earnestly responds, quote, "I thought mine was obvious," indicating that his weakness is for Danielle, also known as Nicole de Lancre. And it's genuinely very cute.
I love it. It is so
There's
cute.
something that I want to say about like the way that Dougray Scott plays this role because I think it's important to emphasize Danielle is meant to be like 18. Prince Henry is probably meant to be in his early to mid 20s. Drew Barrymore was 21 or 22 at the time that she was in this movie. Dougray Scott was like 33 around the time that he was in
Mhm.
this movie. Like he was a decade older than Drew Barrymore. And unfortunately, he looks it. I feel like she looks quite young and he looks significantly older. And I don't mean that like he looks old. I mean that in he doesn't
Mhm.
look 22. So he does a really
Yeah,
good
for
job,
sure.
I think, in spite of that, to play the prince as like almost childish. He brings a lot of
Yes.
immaturity and like petulance to the prince that makes you kind of forget that he looks so much older than he's supposed to be.
Yes, I totally agree with that.
And he does such a good job of it. So these moments where he's very earnest and like complimentary hit even harder.
They come off super sweet
Yes.
and like romantic.
It's like when a little boy gives you a compliment and you're like, where did you learn? You've never learned to lie. You've never told a
Yes,
falsehood.
it's in direct contrast to how you see him kind of like stomping around because he's not getting his
And
way.
he's a brat.
And he's like a brat a little bit. Yeah, exactly.
So Danielle agrees to go with him. He dismisses his guard, Laurent, and his guard's horse for the rest of the day, which is a wild move. And takes Danielle's hand so that they can go to the monastery alone, unchaperoned, but later on we see them with
Yo,
a carriage.
no chaperone throughout this movie.
Yeah, nobody at all. It seems like they're walking around together a bunch, but they still have like a carriage that they can use to like get places. I don't know. It's very murky, right? Like I think the movie's almost intentionally vague about that cuz they just want you to keep seeing them interacting alone.
Yes. No chaperone in
No
sight.
chaperone. Cut to outside of the church where all of the nobility has presumably gathered for mass. where we see the De Gents exiting their carriage and approaching the doors, where the Baroness is stopped by the royal page, played by character actor Toby Jones, who, I mean, is that guy from That Thing. I feel like he's been in fucking everything, and like we all have seen him in something. I personally
Yes.
remember him from the Hunger Games movies because he's one of the TV presenters next to Caesar Flickerman.
He is. Oh my god, that's right.
Mhm.
No, he's like yeah, it's like he's the guy in That Thing.
Yeah,
I honestly, you just know who he is. You just recognize him. You've seen him everywhere.
Toby
Yeah.
Jones. And so his character of Royal Page so far in this movie has had this like really strange flirtationship with Baroness de Ghent. He hands her a small package wrapped and whispers in her ear, and she seems overjoyed to take whatever hot, juicy goss he's told her and fold it into her schemes. As she walks away, he looks longingly after her. Longing, but in like a horny way, like a horny sexual way.
Longing?
Longing, but like horny. We cut to the Franciscan monastery with Danielle and quote unquote just Henry because he doesn't want her to refer to
Aw.
him as sire or your highness or prince. He just wants to be just Henry. And I'm like, listen, just George? Just
Yes.
George? Farmer George? Ain't nobody done it like just George. Quote unquote just Henry asks why she loves books and reading so much. And she tells a really sweet story about how when she was little, her father used to read to her every night from every kind of book, regardless of genre. He died when she was 8. That is like so young. And Utopia
Yeah.
was the last book
Baby.
he brought home. So I know we talked about Utopia a little bit earlier in the pod, how something that comes up a bit when you like just dig a little bit further into the timeline that this movie purports to have is that Utopia wasn't released until 1516, which is like basically the year that this movie is taking place.
That you would assume,
Right.
yeah, based on like Da Vinci's
Yes.
visit and all of that. Yeah.
So there's no way that Danielle would have received this book when she was 8 years old, 10 years prior, before it was written and published. But cool. It's a movie, it's fiction, and we're suspending our disbelief.
I mean, and they don't give a
No, they
time
don't give a
or
specific year.
year. You just know this was 16th century. This was somewhere in the 1500s.
Mhm.
The only thing that I applied a time to was Da Vinci visiting France at the invitation of King Francis.
Mhm.
Also, I feel like the copy she has of Utopia is more of a manuscript. It's not a bound book yet.
Hmm. Yeah, they got the first manuscript ever.
He in his travels, he met the guy,
Oh my god, a signed first edition of the Iliad? I can't believe it. So, the prince remembers how Daniel quoted the book Utopia directly on the first occasion that they met, when she went to go save Maurice, one of the manor's servants. From above, they're still at the monastery. They watch the monks working briefly until a somber looking prince turns around and walks down a set of stairs. Danielle asks him what's wrong, and he responds in like a strangely morose way that she has more passion than any of his tutors in all his years of study. The way he's manic pixie dream girling Danielle, like she will cure all of his ills. Like, time for her to show him how to
Oh
live,
no.
baby. She's the only one who can change him. The manic pixie dream girlification has begun. We cut back from there to the church. Now it looks like mass is over. We see the Baroness scheming with Marguerite, telling her, quote, it's now or never. The king and queen have also attended mass. Marguerite approaches the royal carriage and presents the queen with an extravagant necklace that she claims to have found on the ground and wishes to return. This is the little bundle that the horny royal page gave the Baroness.
Oh, not the horny page.
The horny page, horny reporter, horny witches, if you're talking about Hocus Pocus. So the queen is completely taken by Marguerite, returning this priceless piece of jewelry and invites her and her mother over for tea the following day. And I gotta hand it to him because damn, that was good. That
Mm,
scheme, mwah,
it worked.
perfect. And Marguerite, like, she has a face like an evil little fox. And
She really does. That's such a good
she would make
description.
a great fox cartoon, just like an evil little fox. And she also looks like Angela Kinsey from The Office.
Oh, She does.
She really does. And the fact that they're both horrible
Who's
people
another like, yep.
is
There you
not
go.
lost
Who
on me.
also gives like sneaky fox? Yep.
Absolutely. From there, we cut back to Danielle and the prince in the forest on their way back from the monastery. Turns out one of the wheels has completely broken off of the prince's carriage. One of the drivers says they'll return to the monastery at once to either fix the carriage or get another one or something like that. Danielle says they'll continue on foot and she's chilling.
Crazy.
She's like, we'll just take a walk. It'll be totally
Wild.
cool. And the prince is like, bitch, what? That's like half a day's walk. That's like hours.
She's just trying to get back before
The Baroness is
everyone
back.
else gets back.
And she chides him by saying, where's your sense of adventure? And okay, I'm just going to take a second. We haven't talked about it that much, and I think that's good. I don't think we need to talk about it that much. Drew Barrymore is American. She was born and raised in California.
She's a California girl.
She's a California girl. California girls have like a way of speaking. So that doesn't sound British. And all the people on the movie have a British accent. And Drew Barrymore is trying her level best. Like she's giving it her all.
If you can Californiify
A British
British
accent,
accent.
she found a way. Prince,
Sire,
where is your sense of adventure?
of adventure?
Again, I'm not trying to be a jerk. I think she was great in this movie. That accent hurts.
Oh no. Watching it now, the past like handful of rewatches, it's like worse for me.
Yeah.
Like I notice it more and more.
Yeah. I'm telling you. I watched this for the first time about a month ago with Paola. And she started
I can't believe
speaking.
it took you so long to watch it.
I know, it took me a very long time. She started speaking and I turned towards Paola and I was like, really?
Is this what we're doing
Really?
for the next 2 hours?
Really? Okay. Okay. I'm gonna trust you. So,
Oh shit.
back to the story. This manic pixie dream girl, she doesn't dream herself. He's gonna dream her up. He's gotta be found by her. She must find his sense of adventure. And we see them walking away from the camera, and he has a nice butt. And I just thought I had to say that. So, again, back at the manor, the De Gents return from church, victorious that Marguerite has secured an audience with the queen for the following day. So this is huge, right? Because the queen's probably going to be like, oh my god, this girl's so nice with her beautiful vulpine face. I'm going to introduce her to my son and they will get married. That's where their heads are at, and I gotta respect it. So Jacqueline is jealous and compares herself to Danielle, since Marguerite is clearly the favorite, to like a comical and unrealistic extent. As they enter the home, one of the servants stops the Baroness to ask if she's moved some items that they've noticed are missing, some tapestries, some candelabra. The Baroness says she'll be taking the price of the missing items out of their pay. I'm like, y'all are getting paid? And she clearly seems to be taking the items herself, which I know Paula mentioned that it seems like the Baroness is the thief. At this point in the movie, I am still not 100% on what the fuck is happening with the items and why they continue
to go missing.
Right. Put a pin in that. Go from there back to the forest, where we see that Danielle and the prince are good naturedly lost. Danielle has climbed a cliff that's like 100 feet in the air to get a better look at their surroundings and try to locate the castle and like direct them. To do this, for some reason, she's left the outer part of her gown, so like the embellished, beautiful part of her gown, on the ground and climbed up a rock face in her undergarments. To be fair, her undergarments are still like about 7 different gowns, just like stacked on top of each other, right? She's by no means naked. The prince, incredulous, says, quote, "You swim alone, you rescue servants, you climb rocks. Is there anything you don't do?" And Danielle, this is genuinely very precious, fans out her arms and says, "Fly.
Fly.
This will, boop, come back."
What'd you say again? The pixie fairy.
The manic pixie dream girl.
She wants to fly.
The manic pixie dream girlification. Like,
only thing she can't do is fly.
Only thing she can't do is fly, and we'll find a way to change that. So She cautions him to turn around as she climbs down. Again, as she just fucking bare knuckles it down a fucking rock face, as if she's been doing rock climbing at the gym in Williamsburg for the last 3 years. And
It's all part of her running training and her throwing training.
this bitch is out here fucking like Dauntless from Divergent, just doing fucking parkour
Yes.
and like running and shit. What the fuck?
Not Dauntless. I'm dead. Oh my god. She's Triss.
God. And like knowing how complicated these garments are to put on and take off, he had to have helped her remove the outer dress. There's like
Probably.
lacing to it. So he's probably seen her undergarment by now, like her gowns underneath her exterior gown.
Well, she's fully seen her now.
And they're alone. What's up?
Unchaperoned.
What the fuck are we doing?
He about to fit.
The prince, nope. The prince turns away from the rock face only to get fucking sucker punched by a group of, here I will just quote the movie, gypsies, but what we would probably now call a group of Romany people. The term gypsy is like pretty outdated and considered offensive by a lot of people. We would now probably call them the Roma or Romany people, who, according again to Wikipedia, the internet's encyclopedia, are an Indo-Aryan ethnic group who traditionally live a nomadic itinerant lifestyle.
Now, in the movie, they do refer to themselves as gypsies.
Yeah, because movies are famously sensitive and socially conscious.
Because they're terrible.
Yeah. So we're gonna refer to them as Romany. Saying gypsy seems, I don't know, seems icky. So the prince ends up sword fighting with the band of Romany as Danielle painstakingly climbs down the rest of the fucking cliff. She sees one of the rogues stealing her very fancy outer garments, which are either her mother's or her stepsister's, as Paola mentioned. And now the shit is really on because she's like, oh fuck, give me my fucking dress back.
I need to get back with that dress.
And like clearly the Romany are not trying to kill them because there are like so many of them and there's only the prince and Danielle. So the prince is sword fighting and tussling with one guy when he could have easily been overpowered by like the other 10 guys. Danielle throws herself into the fray and gets kind of captured by one of the men, and the prince says, "Let her go. We're the ones fighting." Danielle is released, because of like honor and because, I don't know, maybe men weren't disgusting in the 16th century. Just kidding. They totally fucking were. They've always been disgusting. But it's a movie for like children and teens. So nothing happens to Danielle.
They're highwaymen, but they're gentlemen.
But they're gentlemen. First and foremost, we're gentle highwaymen. And Danielle is released by the man who seems to be the leader, and she demands a horse to allow her to get back to her home since they have decided to take her escort, who is the prince. She makes a deal that she can take whatever she can carry, and the leader of this group of Romany men is like, yeah, sure, babe, whatever you want to carry, you sweet little tiny gumdrop, yes, take whatever you need. And she goes, incredible. And she squats the prince.
She deadlifts the prince.
And is like, anything I can carry, I'm taking this motherfucker with me. Bye. And apparently this tickles all the men so much that they all start cracking up and like really loving her moxie. And they're like, you know what, dude? You guys should fucking hang out with us. Just kidding.
You know what? You seem like a really good time.
You seem really cool. Like, you're cool and you're really pretty. Come hang out with us, guys. And then, like, all the quarrels are forgotten. Like, everyone's confused, including me. So we cut from that scene back to the manor, where the servants are emptying chamber pots, and the Baroness approaches them to tell them that she must be informed as soon as Danielle gets home, because her absence has been noted. And it's nighttime, baby. Back to the group of Romany. Danielle and the prince are just having like a fabulous is what I was going to say. Jesus.
Fabulous time around the fireplace.
Oh
It's usually me. It happened to you. Finally.
They're having a fabulous time.
Fabulous time.
Back with the Romany. Danielle and the prince are having a fabulous time by the campfire, playing rock, paper, scissors, the most famous and notable 16th century game in France. And
Yes,
the
yes.
prince starts,
Long live
what
tradition.
the fuck? And the prince starts whining about how he never wants to be king. And Danielle reminds him that he was born with privilege, and with that privilege comes specific obligations. So, this is parroting something that his mother has already said to him. You were born into a life of privilege. You have obligations to fulfill. Now, this is the second time that we're hearing this.
Something that she says that I love that she says in this scene is because he's protesting. I'm only ever perceived as a prince. I'm never seen as who I am, but I'm only seen as what I am.
When will my reflection show who I am inside?
I'm watching this scene and I'm like, as he's saying this to a woman
Hmm.
in the 16th century, to not be seen as who you are, but what you are. Like, he's literally saying this to a woman. And then she checks him, like, okay, well, these people who are with, they're never going to be perceived as anything other than thieves
Hmm.
because of what they look like. That's literally the world we live in.
Hmm. Yeah, but like, wah, wah, wah. You know, I'm a prince and I'm mad about it.
Right. Like, at least use your influence,
For the power of
the
good.
influence that you have for good. Yeah.
They both lean in and share a kiss. And the kiss is fine. Drew Barrymore looks 16. He looks 35. It's fine.
My God, but you can't skip over what he says, Nadja.
Tell me what he says.
As she goes on her usual socialist rants, I'm talking about Danielle, not Nadja.
Okay.
She goes, my mouth has run away with me again, in her California British
Yep.
accent. And he looks at her and he says, no, my lady, it is your mouth that has me hypnotized.
Ooh.
Ah!
Okay.
Okay. Okay, Prince Henry.
When they kiss, the Romany men all around them start clowning them and they break apart.
And clapping.
Again, guys, you're really cool. And I know we fought a little bit, but I think we should hang out.
You guys are so cute together.
Like, you're so fun. Come back. What must be hours later, like middle of the night shit, on a horse, the prince takes Danielle back to the manor and he tells her, quote, you saved my life, you know. And now they're on first name basis and kissing status. Ooh. And he asks her out on another date the following day to the ruins at Amboise. He asks if she can meet him there tomorrow, and she's like, not really sure because she already knows she's probably going to get in like deep shit for being out so late that day. And he says he'll wait all day for her. Another thing he does is he's like a huge fan of cutting her off like mid phrase or mid sentence.
Oh my God, it fucking drives me
Drives me
crazy.
nuts. And it's going to get really annoying really fast. We see the prince arrive at the palace, waking his sleeping parents, who, shocker, sleep in the same bed. Who would have thunk?
Look at that. Okay, King
Look at that.
Francis.
He declares to his previously sleeping parents, these poor folks, that he wants to open a university, which shocks them both. He wants to invite the gypsies, quote unquote, the Romany folk, to the ball at the end of the week. And both his parents are like, ah. And it's almost like they're so surprised at seeing him have any enthusiasm about anything that they're like, yes, okay, sure, totally. Whatever a university, amazing.
Yeah.
Because they're just like, he wants something? Great. We'll give it to him. Back at the manor, the Baroness shocks Danielle awake, demanding to know where she's been. We can assume that it is early the following morning. Danielle tries to lie her way out of it and is unsuccessful, but refuses, regardless, even though she gets caught in a lie, refuses to get up to make the breakfast for the women of the house.
Mm-hmm.
The Baroness sends Jacqueline to make breakfast in her stead.
Oh, Jacqueline is so mad.
She's fucking pissed.
She's like, I fucking knew it.
One of the servants calls Danielle and tells her to come quick. By this point, the rest of the morning has passed. Danielle is back out in the fields, right? Doing like her manual labor shit. Danielle rushes inside to find that Marguerite is putting on her mother's fine dress and glass slippers as a reprimand for Danielle's insubordination that morning. She is now, quote, not allowed, unquote, to go to the ball because she hasn't been completing all of her chores. Danielle says, but that was my mother's dress. And Marguerite, incredibly cunty, just off the Richter scale of cunt, responds,
Like bad cunt, not
yeah,
good
no,
cunt.
bad. See you next Tuesday type shit. As they say on Movies That Raised Us
She
pod,
wasn't giving cunt.
she wasn't giving charisma, uniqueness, nerve, and talent. She was giving see you next Tuesday. She responds, yes, and she's dead. Just
Oh
like
my
that.
god.
Ooh, but the delivery is like low-key incredible. That actress did the damn thing. Danielle does the only possible thing in response and punches her in the fucking face. Marguerite starts running from Danielle as Danielle's chasing her right at her heels. They end up in the dining room near the large fireplace where Danielle has unfortunately left her copy of Utopia. Marguerite dangles the book in front of the fire while the Baroness threatens her into choosing either her mother's shoes or her father's book. This is diabolical. Like, any sympathy I
Yeah.
felt for Radmilla earlier in the movie has fucking evaporated. This is
Done.
insane work. And as she's trying to get Danielle to pick one item or the other, she makes sure to tell her, quote, but neither will save you from a sound lashing, end quote. All right, bitch, just because you pick one of the items doesn't mean you're home free, because you're still gonna get whipped.
Doesn't save you. This is where I run away. This is like, all right, fuck you.
Fuck y'all. Yeah.
Bye.
Find me in the woods. The Baroness takes the slippers from a very reluctant Danielle. Pero de maldad, Marguerite takes the Utopia book and throws it in the fire anyway.
Yo, this tore me. And like you're watching it and you know that she's gonna do it anyway because
Yeah.
she's a fucking see you next Tuesday.
Yeah.
She would have never thrown the shoes in the fire. I
Nope.
would have just picked the book.
Because she
I
wanted
would
to
have
wear the
just picked the
shoes.
book. This is where I literally hated them.
And this is where I'm like, when does she die? Bring out the weapons, put her in the arena. Who else is in these Hunger
Not
Games?
the
Like, when does she die? Danielle sobs as the Baroness watches, cold. Cut to the next scene where Jacqueline is tending to Danielle's wounds across her back from being whipped.
You know, who do you think they made
I was thinking that
with
when I watched the
Danielle?
movie this most recent time. I was like,
Do
which
you think
servant?
Rodmilla did it herself? Or do you
No,
think
she's
she
too
makes
lazy.
one of them do
I
it?
think she makes one of the servants do it.
That would be diabolical.
Yeah, she's awful. As Jacqueline is tending to her wounds, she says, quote, you really brought this on yourself, end quote. Why, Jacqueline? Was it what she was wearing? Literally,
Oh
nothing could
no.
warrant that, but sure. In spite of this comment, they have a sweet and companionable moment where Jacqueline says that Marguerite shouldn't have said that about Danielle's mother. Cut to the palace at the kingdom, where Marguerite, sporting a comically circular black eye, like it was applied with a stamp, is having tea with the queen and the baroness. She claims to have saved a baby from a runaway horse. That's why she's got the bruise on her face. And the queen is like, oh my God, amazing, incredible. And then she mentions, oh, bummer, my son won't be able to join us because, he was just gone all night last night and he's like doing other stuff today. He's been all over the place. And the baroness is like, oh my God. Paola's gonna love this, but the Baroness comments, quote, must be marvelous to have that kind of stamina, end quote. Jesus.
All night and now all day, sir.
Also, everybody's like, he's a rake. Amazing. Like, it's very Lady Bridgerton, reform rakes make the best husbands. So the queen asks if the Baroness knows La Comtesse de Lancre, and the Baroness responds, Nicole de Lancre? And the Baroness perpetuates the lie that the Comtesse is staying at her manor and is their cousin. And Marguerite is looking at her mother like, what the fuck? Like, what are you talking about? And the Baroness looks at her and goes, oh, Nicole, that you like to call Cinderella? I don't know what this does inside Marguerite's brain, but it's like something not good. It's like connecting the currents on like a potato battery, because she starts having an absolute, honest to God, fucking fit, a meltdown in front of the queen. She stands up from the table and just starts screaming and thrashing for a good 10 to 15 seconds and then turns around as if nothing happened. And the queen is like, what the fuck did I just see with my eyes?
Are you okay? Ma'am?
And Marguerite goes, there was a bee in your bonnet, bitch.
Get this bee. You know who's getting that bee? Danielle, all night and all
Oh
day.
my God. I don't want to know what the bee is in this context.
That's what she's imagining.
No one knows. It's provocative.
Danielle was out all night. Now they hear that the prince was out all night and he's still out. Now they're doing the math. They're like, oh shit.
Maybe it is marvelous to have that kind of stamina. Ask Danielle.
No wonder Danielle was so tired this morning.
From there, we cut to the ruins where Danielle is once again dressed as the Comtesse, wearing a fancy gown.
She's wearing a red gown this time. I wonder what that means.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it's like a sense of detachment. Like this is her separating herself from the prince, since the moments of the most vulnerability that she's had with him are when she's wearing like blue, cool tone gowns. And the other De Ghent women often wear red.
Yeah. And she's wearing this head piece that we saw in Marguerite earlier on in the movie.
Mm-hmm. This is her kind of putting distance between herself and the prince. And she approaches the prince. She's clearly been crying, probably because her back hurts like a bitch and she still had to get dressed. He asks if she's okay, and she says she isn't herself. And he responds, quote, I feel as though my skin is the only thing keeping me from going everywhere at once, end quote. And that's kind of cute. But there's something
He's
frustrating
precious.
here where, like, she keeps saying things like, I'm not feeling like myself. She's clearly been crying. Her eyes are red and her face is wet, and he just is like a puppy, like just can't stop being like, but and I'm having feelings too, and I'm just having such a great time, and everything's been so great. Like,
I'm so happy you're here and I love your company. Like, he is clearly not even, he's not seeing her, he's not listening to her.
mm-hmm.
He's completely oblivious and literally can't see past his own feelings.
She says that she has something to tell him, but he keeps cutting her off again because he's like so excited. She says, I cannot stay long, but I had to see you. There is much to say. And she's clearly trying to gather her courage. He is getting just a capital F minus in reading the room, okay? He shows her his special spot where he used to play as a boy, quote, before the war, end quote. And I'm like, which war? But I have not Googled that. Danielle says that it's beautiful. And he gives a precious speech about no longer imagining spending his future alone. Quote, I have not slept for fear I would wake to find all this a dream, end quote. By this point, Danielle is openly crying, tears streaming down her face. He continues just monologuing about how she's inspired him to find his purpose and his freedom. Again, Manic Pixie Dream Girl must be Manic Pixie Dream Girled. He tells her, Nicole, you are unlike any courtier I've ever met. Tomorrow I will make it known to the world.
But he hasn't said anything. He hasn't made a proposal. He hasn't even nothing.
They've kissed twice though,
What do you mean?
so
What are you announcing, my
she's
guy?
basically pregnant. She keeps crying as he tips up her chin. And you know what? I love a tipped up chin. Incredible move. And asks, what is it you wanted to tell me? This bitch is sobbing at this point. And she says, quote, simply that last night was the most wonderful night of my life, end quote. He pulls her back in to kiss her, Presh, and wraps his hands around her back, and she cries out from the pain from the fucking whip wounds on her back, which break what is unfortunately a pretty good kiss. After this, she's distraught. She's in some physical pain and some emotional pain, and she flees the ruins, running away from the prince. As she returns to the manor, the Baroness immediately confronts her about being Nicole de Lancre. She confronts Danielle about stealing and hiding her mother's gown and slippers from Marguerite. And Danielle says, I would rather die 1,000 deaths than to see my mother's dress on that spoiled, selfish cow.
Oh, I love the way she delivers this.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, she does it with so much anger. You know, for all the shit we talk about for her accent,
She's got the emotions.
Drew Barrymore plays the emotions so fucking well.
She does. She really does. Can't fault that. I'm making fun of her accent in a good-natured way. Drew Barrymore has more fame and money than I'll ever see in my life, and I think that's great for her. She was really great in this movie. The accent a little rough. So, Danielle says this, the Baroness coldly responds, perhaps we could arrange that. She locks Danielle in a dungeon and threatens her and the servants.
The dungeon, the house has a basement.
I'm calling it a dungeon.
Not the dungeon.
The dungeon. Paula, have a little imagination. Where's your sense of adventure?
I'm done. All right.
I'm so sorry. And it's the dungeon. And she threatens Danielle and the servants against letting her out. She tells her daughters to gather, quote, anything that will fetch a price, unquote, from around the house. Bitch, what the fuck?
You said that shit out loud this time.
Jacqueline stops and says, Mother, it's only a ball. To which the Baroness responds, Yes, and you're just going to go for the food.
Yo,
Good
jeez.
God. From there, we cut to the prince, who is learning from the queen that the Comtesse is engaged to a Belgian. She says that she's passing on information she's gotten from the Baroness. The prince is fucking pissed. And he's also kind of suspicious because he's like, Nicole's not the one telling me this. It's just the Baroness. Like, what does the Baroness care? Why is she telling you this information? And for a second, I'm like, ooh, we're employing critical thinking. And then it kind of like quickly goes away. So we cut to the town square where Maurice, the servant who was rescued by Danielle, is trying to get Gustave to help her out of the dungeon and to see the prince. He implores him to go to Da Vinci. Cut to the ball where everyone is oohing and eyeing at fireworks. Gustave somehow manages to sneak close enough to commit attempted murder by dropping a heavy fucking vase on the royal page's head. We can assume to steal his outfit and to fucking kill him. There's just no way you survive that.
Just committing murder out here.
Legit. I'm like, yo, Gustave's out here catching a charge, just dropping bodies. Okay. Cut to the manor where we see the De Gents leaving for the ball. Jacqueline is dressed as a horse and complaining about it. And like Marguerite and the Baroness are just so shitty to her. Like, I cannot wait. I can't wait for what happens next. Back at the ball, Gustave is now dressed as a royal page and goes to find Signore da Vinci before passing out because he's a fanboy, which is really funny. Cut back to the manor where Gustave has brought Da Vinci to help Danielle out of the cellar, dungeon, basement. He removes the door from its hinges in like 30 seconds and then she's free.
Genius.
Wow.
Genius.
Smartest man of
I
our
would have
time.
never thought of that. I'm watching that like, oh, he just removed the hinges. That is so smart. Next time I'm locked in a room,
Take the hinges
I
off.
know what to do. Take the hinges off.
He says, I shall go down in history as the man who opened a door. I love him. I love Signore da Vinci. Danielle comes clean to Da Vinci, saying she's a servant. And he replies, quote, I'm the bastard son of a peasant. What does that have to do with anything? End quote. And this is where I want to start rapping Hamilton.
Yo. Wow, you're really my sister.
I know. Bastard, orphan, son of a whore.
I'm a bastard, orphan, son of a whore.
Brutal.
And a Scotsman.
Damn, not just a whore, but a Scotsman?
Dropped in the middle of the Caribbean.
That's fucking insane. He tells her that the prince will understand that she needs to go be honest with him because she is the one he loves. And she says, a bird may love a fish, signore.
Signore.
But where will they live?
Honestly, I love this line. I do. I love this line so much. The delivery is cute, but I love this line so much.
Da Vinci responds, then I shall have to make you wings.
I love it.
I know, it's so sweet. Cut to Prince Henry talking to the king. The king admits that he may have been too harsh on Henry regarding the marriage contract and that he was hoping that it would bring some change and structure to his life. That the university he wants to open seems like a great idea, and he doesn't have to announce anything at the ball. You can change your mind. You don't have to do this. And it's genuinely really, really sweet. The dad just being like, hey, I just wanted you to take some initiative, and it seems like you're doing that. You don't have to get married right now if you don't want to.
You don't have to rush it. Yeah.
Like, that's so sweet.
It seems like they really care about their son.
Yeah.
And also, it wasn't so much about making him get married. It was about do something with your life.
Do anything.
Whatever it is. Right, exactly.
And the prince bitterly and ruefully responds, quote, I've made my decision, end quote. Back at the manor, the gang, I'm just calling the gang like the servants and Da Vinci, sees Danielle off in a carriage headed to the ball. Da Vinci goes to look at Gustave's paintings, and Gustave is like, "You want to go see my paintings now?" And Da Vinci's like, "When you're as old as I am, now is all you've got." Respect.
This is it, honestly.
And before they go to leave, the servants stop them and say, "Wait, it's tradition." And they wait for Danielle to reach the end of the drive and turn her arm out of the carriage to wave back at them before leaving.
Oh, it's a cute little
I
callback.
love that. I love that type of shit. Because it's like, oh, the writers were writing. You know what I mean? Oh, they
Yeah,
were
they were paying
thinking.
attention.
There was
Mm.
consistency. Like, historical, weirdly layered in things aside, like, the writing in this movie is really good.
I enjoy the writing in this movie
Really,
very much. Everything
like, so solid.
everything was layered really well. Like even with historical figures,
Mhm.
mixing in like the fairy tale aspect of it, adding the tidbits of political commentary from Danielle and even from the prince, and kind of like this push and pull between kind of these socialist views that Danielle has and the prince's position as a royal. Even that commentary written in and layered into the narrative is really well done.
Mhm. Back at the ball, we see Jacqueline and the prince's guard, Laurent, both dressed up as horses, playfully neighing at each other over a table of hors d'oeuvres.
Hey, listen, to each their
I'm only here
own,
for
you
the
know?
food. Put that on a t-shirt.
Mm.
I'm only ever here for the food.
As he holds a carrot.
As he
It's like,
munches on a carrot. I'm like, and it's healthy?
mm,
Damn.
come munch on this carrot.
No. Danielle walks Danielle walks up to the ball dressed in this stunning gown, right? It's her mother's gown. She's got the matching quote unquote glass slippers, and she's wearing these gorgeous white paper wings.
Beautiful.
And she is coming into the ball, approaching from behind the crowd as the king is making an engagement announcement about Henry, about the prince, the Dauphin.
And she doesn't wear a mask, right, to this masquerade. But the way they did her makeup,
Mm-hmm.
it almost looks like there's a translucent mask on her
Mm-hmm.
face. Almost like communicating, she's been here all along. She's been who she is all along.
As he's about to speak, Danielle catches Henry's eye from her position behind the crowd, and everyone turns to see what he's looking at. Henry runs to her through the crowd in like precious fashion, like he is so excited to see her. And he immediately asks if she's engaged, and she tells him no, that he was misinformed. She tells him she wants to speak with him first, and you could assume like speak with him privately. She wants to have some discretion. But he's like, no, 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 we're totally cool. I don't need to hear the rest of what you're saying. Hey, everybody, look at this beautiful woman. Also, I wanted to tell you, I needed to tell you, much like an excited child, that I invited, quote, the gypsies, end quote.
See, look what I did. Aren't you so happy with me? Are you so
And like
proud?
Dougray Scott walks the line of this character like really, really well.
I'm telling you, he could have been very
He
annoying,
could
but
have
he ends
been.
up playing him in a very endearing
And that
way.
I think that's probably why he was cast. I feel like anybody else they looked at was
Yeah.
probably like so petulant and like frustrating.
Right, or too suave,
Yeah.
like
Too
yeah.
hot boy. As everyone at the ball watches, the Baroness is pissed. She runs through the crowd and rips off one of Danielle's
This
wings.
fucking bitch. And right before she does this, she's pulling Marguerite with
Mm-hmm.
her. And Marguerite's like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
The Baroness is like, "I'm making you queen." She thinks that by tearing down
Mm-hmm.
Danielle, that somehow brings up Marguerite's position. It does not. It makes you look bad.
And that Marguerite and Danielle are interchangeable. Like that the prince, it's not that he's experiencing actual feelings, it's that like,
Mm,
oh, I just need to fill up this spot held by a woman.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
if it's not Danielle, I guess it could be Marguerite. That's fine. It's all the same to me. When in reality, it's not. But that's kind of
Right.
what the Baroness is banking on.
Well, and of course the Baroness considers her daughter to be
Superior.
la mejorcita,
Yeah.
yeah, superior.
The Baroness tells the prince that Danielle is an imposter and a servant in her household in incredibly dramatic fashion. The prince doesn't want to believe it, but alas, Danielle's like, fuck, I gotta tell the truth. My real name is Danielle de Barbarac. And I'm not gonna lie to you, this isn't Drew Barrymore's best crying. I've liked her in this movie. This crying is not doing it for any of us.
She does a really good job at crying
In other
in
parts,
all the other crying
totally,
scenes.
for
Yeah.
sure. The prince is clearly shattered at this admission from her, but he's also like still quite stupid.
He's embarrassed,
He's
is what he
embarrassed and
is.
also a little stupid. She calls him Henry because she's like, no, Henry, wait, right? Like, let me explain myself. And he scolds her for addressing him informally because, quote, I am a prince of France and you are just like them, end quote.
First, he's here showing his whole ass,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because she was allowed to address him informally when he thought that she was also a noble.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as he found out, even after everything he's learned about her throughout this whole movie, he still demeans her because she's just a commoner.
Mm-hmm.
But then, in the way that he delivers, you're just like them, it makes you wonder that it's not because she's just a commoner, it's because she's lied to him and he feels manipulated as he feels that everyone around him tries to manipulate him.
Mm-hmm. Right. He's an object to be won, something to be used.
Correct.
At this point, the Baroness and Marguerite are so fucking smug. They may as well be high fiving right now, based on like their reaction. We see Danielle running from the ball, tripping on the ground and leaving behind one of her slippers. As Da Vinci approaches her from off to the side near the entrance of the ball, she runs off. Da Vinci enters and approaches a sulking prince.
This is where he looks the most childish,
Yeah.
where he's literally sitting on the
Mhm.
ground, pouting,
Yep.
and he has to get reprimanded by Da Vinci.
And even then, you don't know if it works because as Da Vinci's like, yo, what the fuck is your problem? The prince is like, quote, I have been born to privilege and with it comes specific obligations, end quote. Third time's the charm. Da Vinci responds, quote, horseshit, and reprimands the prince for how he acted towards Danielle. The prince storms off and Da Vinci leaves the glass slipper on the stone wall of the passage as it begins heavily raining. We cut to see a fucking bedraggled looking Danielle running towards her manor, crying on the steps, her remaining paper wing completely destroyed.
And it's her mom's dress, and it's probably getting
It's probably
ruined and full of
ruined.
mud.
Cut to the next day where Danielle is working the fields on the grounds of the manor. The Baroness goes to taunt her, saying that the prince was about to announce his engagement to Marguerite, which is bullshit, when Danielle interrupted the ball. Quote, you brought this on yourself, you know, end quote, which is another instance after Danielle's whipping, right? After Jacqueline is nursing her lash wounds, that somebody's telling Danielle, oh, this bad thing that happened to you, you brought it on yourself. This is your fault.
Yep.
And Danielle's pissed. And the Baroness is like, you know what, girl, be pissed. Whatever. Express your emotions because you are not my problem anymore. And Danielle's like, is that what I am? Your fucking problem? And there's this really
So fucked
hard
up.
moment where Danielle reminds the Baroness that she's the only mother she's ever known. And wasn't there ever a moment that Radmilla loved her? And Radmilla responds, how can you love a pebble in your shoe?
Jesus.
Fuck.
Oof.
One of the servants comes to fetch Danielle and the Baroness to come see. It's all here. They find Monsieur Le Pieux delivering all of the things he's bought from the Baroness, which is basically every single thing that has gone missing from the manor. We find out the reason he's bringing all this stuff back is in exchange for, quote, buying Danielle. This is next level fucked up.
It's kind of dark.
It's super dark.
Like, they have trafficked Danielle.
Yeah. Danielle is grabbed by his guards and manhandled onto his carriage. We see Da Vinci in the process of painting who we know now to be Danielle. So this is like the movie is kind of taking some fun creative liberties with an actual portrait that Leonardo da Vinci painted in real life.
Which actually, in real life, looks a lot like Drew Barrymore.
Oh, for sure.
No, I think it's amazing that they set the resemblance to this portrait that actually exists.
Yeah.
And it does truly resemble Drew Barrymore in a way. It really does. I think that's fascinating. And then, I mean, obviously for the movie, they make some changes to make it look more like her.
Mhm.
But in my honest opinion, there's definitely a resemblance between the real life Drew Barrymore and this real portrait that exists.
And we go to a church where the entire royal family and royal court are gathered to watch Prince Henry's wedding to a comically sobbing Spanish infanta, a Spanish princess. She's crying so hard, it seems like she's gonna throw up. Like, it's absurd and egregious.
No, it's the squeals. It's the squeals for me.
Ah, 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 ah. Like, she's like scream wailing. It's like insanity.
Oh no.
In spite of himself, Prince Henry starts laughing because what the fuck are you gonna do when someone is crying near you like that? He starts laughing and lifts up her veil, and she starts crying even harder. He gives her a light kiss on the cheek and releases her, where she immediately runs to who looks to be like an old man that she
He
calls,
got the moon roof and
God,
everything.
the moon roof. I'm weak. She calls him
Oh,
Don
no.
Pepito
Don
and
Pepito.
starts kissing his entire balding head. And we see the Spanish king and queen immediately start to bicker. Like, they're blaming each other. They're arguing with each other. This is your fault. No, this is your fault. No, this is your fault. And the French king and queen begin to laugh.
They've been trying to get Pepito out of this woman's bed
Yo.
for years.
And she's like, nah,
They can't get rid of him.
that's my
She's like, no, that's
man.
my man.
My man.
I'm gonna stand by
I'ma
him.
stand by him. That's my Don Pepito. We see Prince Henry approach Maurice at the manor, what we can assume to be later that same day, and inquire after Danielle. Maurice and Jacqueline let him know that Danielle was sold to Monsieur Le Pieux just after the mask. We can infer that it has been at least a couple weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks maybe, since
Yeah.
all of these events have transpired. So now the prince is like, oh shit. The prince warns them not to tell anyone that they've seen him or that they've spoken to him. And he beckons Laurent, his guard, and leaves. Cut to a foggy, fucking awful looking manor where Danielle is doing house chores around Mr. Lepieu's house, wearing irons and chains around her feet. He tells her, I would remove your chains if you promise not to run away again.
So you know she's been fighting. You know she's been trying her hardest
Fighting.
to escape this place.
Danielle looks like shit, right? Like, there are bags under her eyes. She looks exhausted. She looks like gaunt and thin. And she snatches his dagger out of his holster when he approaches her and gets very close to her. She slashes his face and then, holding him at knife point, threatens to kill him if he comes any closer to her. Basically demands that he set her free.
And then there's this point where she like pushes him off and he like lunges himself at her with his tongue out.
Ugh.
Like, you get the impression that this man was going to force himself on her any minute. He was approaching her and smelling her hair and coming up from behind her. I would assume he hasn't come up that close to her throughout her time there, because this would have happened a lot sooner.
Yeah.
Where she would have reached for that dagger, or maybe it had before and she was able to fight her way out of it, but she noticed he wears his dagger on his hide. Next time he fucking tries to come up to me, that's the first thing that I'm reaching for.
Yeah. However, we see as the viewer that luckily the prince is on his way. Just kidding. Not luckily. He doesn't fucking do anything. Why? Because Danielle demands the key to her leg irons from Le Pieux as she's holding him at dagger point.
Also, why does he have no more people there with him?
Obsessed with that. Like, it's really hard to get good help these days, you know? Like, I love how much nobody seems to have any fucking bonus help. Like, nobody seems to have any levels of security. This man is so self-assured that he can tame Danielle. Like, girl, no.
That's where he fucked up.
Oh yeah, Danielle forces him to give her the key. And as she leaves this awful manor with like a dazed look on her face, but like a spring in her step because she's ready to get the fuck out of there, the prince has just arrived on horseback and approaches her. And he tells her, quote, I came to rescue you, end quote.
Your services are not needed, sir.
Truly, you suck at this. She's like, rescue me, a commoner? And he's like, I actually came to beg your forgiveness. That's more like it, motherfucker. We want to see you grovel.
That's right, Prince Henry. Grovel.
He calls her by her name in a very sweet moment and then brings out the glass slipper she left behind at the ball, asking if she could lead him to its owner, which is obviously her.
Oh. And for Danielle, in this moment, like she asks him to say her name again
Mhm.
because he's never been able to refer to her by her real name.
And she sits down crying, and he tells her, I kneel before you, not as a prince, but as a man in love. He
Oh.
proposes to her, using the glass slipper in his hands as a sort of engagement ring. And he puts the glass slipper on her foot,
On her socked foot.
like, shut up, stop. Don't. I don't want to think about
Yo,
it.
I'm sorry.
I don't want to think about it.
It's very romantic and it's very sweet. But every time I see this scene, I'm like, yo, you look like you haven't bathed
In weeks.
in as long of a time as you've been at this place. Those socks look like they've been through it. And this man's completely unfazed and just slips the slipper
Yeah,
right
because,
on.
everyone smells bad,
And
Paola.
I'm just like, wow, that's so romantic.
We cut from there to the manor with the ladies de Ghent, where Jacqueline lies to her mother and sister about what the prince said after leaving church. Laurent comes to summon the Baroness and her daughters to take them to the palace and asks them to arrive in style. As she enters the palace, the king asks, Did you or did you not lie to the Queen of France? Ooh, girl, that sounds like a bad question I have to answer.
Yikes. She thought she was gonna go over there and get
And they were
a
about to be like, girl, congratulations. Damn, you're so married to my son.
wow. No.
Rodmilla starts kind of panicking and saying that she would do anything for the love of her daughter. That's why she told the queen what she did. And this is like cherry on top, honestly, in my opinion. Marguerite takes this opportunity to come forward and be like, she's crazy. She concocted this plan all by herself. I'm a victim. I'm a victim like you. I was never involved in this.
Absolutely betrays the shit out of her mom.
Honestly, I respect it. Low key, I respect it because I'm like, you know what, 50-50 chance that works.
Like, bitch.
Marguerite and Radmilla tussle. They tussle in front of the king and queen on the floor. The king asks Jacqueline, who is still standing behind them, quote, Are they always like this? And Jacqueline chuckles and responds, Worse.
Oh goodness.
Radmilla tries to threaten her about being part of the plan, like threaten Jacqueline for her complicity in conspiring against the Baroness and Marguerite. And Jacqueline responds, Of course not. I'm only here for the food.
Huh.
Comeback of the fucking century,
Damn.
girl.
Love it.
And Laurent gives her a little sweet smile.
That's her man.
The queen strips the Baroness of her title and condemns her and her, quote, horrible daughter to be shipped to the Americas. Yikes. Danielle enters and volunteers to speak for the Baroness. As she walks in, every person in the hall stands up, with the exception of the De Ghents, because they're all confused. They don't know what's going on. Danielle is wearing like full regalia and a small crown. So, how fucking long has it been? If she's married to the prince, has she been able to keep that a secret? Again, everyone bows to her as she enters and makes herself known to the
Yeah.
room.
Now, if they had a wedding, how does Rodmilla and Marguerite not know? So, if they had a wedding, it wasn't a public wedding. It wasn't announced because they're still courtiers. They would know whatever happened at court. So, my personal theory is that since Prince Henry was marrying a commoner, they had a private wedding, they kept the wedding quiet, then just presented the queen, the new queen, up, here's the queen, to the royal court.
I think that makes sense.
That's my theory that I'm going with.
You're sticking to it. Danielle has literally never looked better as she approaches the Baroness. The Baroness, who is now knelt on the ground, addresses her as Your Highness and bows down to her.
Bow down.
The prince says, Marguerite, I don't believe you've met my wife. His wife, because the prince is a wife guy.
He's a wife guy. Let's go, Prince.
That's my
Oh, we know we
wife.
liked you.
Danielle asks the king and queen to show the Baroness the same courtesy. that she herself had bestowed upon Danielle. So, no courtesy at all. We see immediately after that scene Marguerite and the Baroness working with servant washerwomen. And as they make insubordinate comments to their washerwoman boss, she shoves them into a vat of like boiling hot dye. And that just seemed unnecessary, I think.
Nah, it was very necessary. I loved it.
Whew.
How long is it gonna take that dye to come off of
Oh,
them?
that's like a smooth never. From there, we cut to Da Vinci unveiling his gorgeous painting as a belated wedding present to Danielle and the prince, who are now accompanied by Gustav and the servants from Danielle's manor. This is really, really sweet, this like entire moment. It's honestly like kind of like a goosebumps on your arms way to end this movie. Really like
It's very
wrap it
sweet.
all up, bring it all together. Danielle and the prince kind of mess around, like having a little bit of banter going back and forth, and they perch against a window, and he takes her hands and tells her, quote, "We're supposed to live happily ever after," end quote. Danielle responds,
Mm.
"Says who?"
Hmm.
And he responds, "You know what? I don't know." And they share a very nice kiss. Now, we're back with the Grande Dame narrating over a shot of the famous painting we just saw. And she says, "My great great grandmother's portrait hung in the university until the revolution. By then, the truth of the romance had been reduced to a mere fairy tale. Though they did live happily ever after, the point, gentlemen, is that they lived."
Oh, and then you see the brothers Grimm getting back into their carriage, leaving the place as the camera pans around this castle where the prince used to live, the same castle that Danielle tried to enter to find Maurice. We're right back there at the end of the movie. Then you understand that their family continues to rule in that day in France. This spectacular location is called, Naja, help me with this
It's
pronunciation.
called Le Château de Hautefort in the Dordogne region of France.
And this chateau is still open to the public today and offers tours. So you can visit this magnificent place. And this movie ends, and you feel how you feel anytime you see a Cinderella story, which is happy, and they live happily ever
Mhm.
after. And it's such a feel good story, as always.
Mhm. And guys, that's Ever After, a Cinderella story.
Naja, did you like this movie? When I've been telling you about this movie for years
Mhm.
and you didn't watch it, and then finally watched it a couple weeks
Mhm.
ago, how'd you feel?
At the beginning I was skeptical, as I've mentioned. You know, I was like, there's Vaseline on the lens. Everything is sepia filtered. What's the accent about? What's happening here? Why is the love interest 15 years older than the female love interest? Like what's happening? And you know what?
Why is the exposure
Why
so
is the
high?
exposure so high? Why is everything in the luminous filter on Instagram? Like, but you know what? By the end of the movie, it fucking came together. I was sold. By the end of the movie, I was sold.
Yes, this movie wins you over. I love this movie. I can rewatch this movie over and over. What would you say is one of your favorite details of the movie, or one of your favorite callbacks, or
I think one of my favorite details is the being born into a life of privilege and that having certain obligations. Like how that is kind of like
how
repeated.
that keeps coming back?
Yeah. And it's through different characters, just kind of like to each character that means something different, right? So like to the queen,
Hmm.
when the queen says it to her son, the prince, it's like, you were born into privilege, that's certain responsibilities. That means you have to get married when you don't want to. That means you have to have heirs. That means you have
Hmm.
to do kind of like, it's about obligation and duty. When
Hmm. Hmm.
Danielle says it, it's like, you have a responsibility to be a good person. You have a responsibility to
Hmm.
do just things, to be charitable and to help people. You have a responsibility to help. And then when
Yes.
he says it about
Yes.
himself, I was born into privilege, that comes with certain obligations. It's almost like going back to what it was that his mother had initially said to him. Like, you need to do stuff you don't want to do, like get married, start a life with someone you don't like.
Mhm.
Like that's just part of it. Those are the obligations you need to contend with.
When he says it, it sounds sacrificial.
Mhm.
It sounds like I need to sacrifice myself and my happiness to do my duty.
Mhm.
Right? It reminds me of that line that our other Prince Henry of England, Prince Henry Hanover Stuart Fox,
Lols.
when he says Prince Henry belongs to England, right?
Mhm.
Where I don't belong to me. I can't make my
Right.
choices. Prince Henry in France has that same sentiment when he delivers that line. And furthermore, I think something that the movie is trying to communicate when they say that line is also like, you were born to privilege. That comes with the responsibility to give back. That comes with the responsibility to serve your community.
Mhm.
So it kind of has like that political undertone, which I really appreciate is in this movie. One of my favorite details in this movie, I am such a fan of Da Vinci as a take on the fairy godmother.
Mm.
That is one of my favorite things in this movie. And Da Vinci's known for one of the many things he was known for, Da Vinci in real life, was his enthusiasm for flight
Mhm.
and his inventions, and they kind of pass this trait on to Danielle when the prince asks her, is there nothing you can't do?
Mhm.
And she answers with fly. That's the thing she wishes she can do, flying. It represents this freedom that she doesn't have. And then Da Vinci designs wings for her to wear to this ball. Another thing besides flying that she never thought she could do. And even that his design of a kite is what leads the prince to find Danielle in the first place at the beginning of the movie.
Mhm.
So I just think to make him the fairy godmother and to incorporate his inventions and his love of flight and incorporate that into Danielle's story and her arc is so well done. And I think it's just so interesting the way that they use Da Vinci as this vessel to communicate this freedom that Danielle was looking for throughout the movie. Really well done by the writers, again, to layer in these historical characters, the actual historical events, and layer it in into this fairy tale, essentially, into this fantasy. So big fan, big fan. One another detail that kind of comes back around is Rodmilla's line where she says things can always get worse. I love that shit came right back to bite her in the ass because things did get worse for her. Psh, right at the end, deservedly so, thanks to herself. So, sisters, to wrap this up, Naja, we can't pick book or movie here. I mean, I guess we can.
Mhm.
Let's okay. How about let's say instead of book or movie, I'll say favorite Cinderella adaptation.
Cinderella's never the story I go for. Like,
Mm.
I just don't like it. But I think this has to be my favorite of the Cinderellas.
I'm gonna give you mine in
Mhm.
order. Brandy Cinderella, Ever After,
Mhm.
Hilary Duff's Cinderella,
Close third.
and then 2015's Disney's live action remake of Cinderella.
Mm.
And those are very close to each other. Like I can watch them over and over and love them every time. Naja, is this
Mhm.
a movie that your significant other would watch with you?
Yeah, he did watch it with me, and it wasn't his favorite movie in the world, but he was a very good sport about it, so I'm mad at it.
While I was watching this movie, I don't know, maybe a couple months
Mm.
ago. And my husband surprised the shit out of me actually because I'm watching it in my room. I'm like folding laundry. He walks in and he goes, I love this movie. I haven't seen this in so long.
Mhm.
I'm like, wait, what? And he was like, I used to watch this movie so much as a kid. He would watch it over and over. I'm like, stop playing right
Triple
now.
platinum.
So this went triple platinum in his house. And I was like, that's kind of amazing. And he sat with me and finished it that day, and then he rewatched it with me again on another rewatch that I had. So yes, 100% he'd watch this with me for sure. Do they stay together?
Yeah.
For sure. Hello, they had babies,
Mhm.
and their great great grandchildren are ruling France now. And last but certainly not least, on a scale from 1 to ardently admire and love, how do you feel about this movie?
I think this one's like a solid 7 for me.
Oh, seven's a good
Yeah.
number. I'm gonna go with an 8.
Okay, it's a little high.
I like it. I enjoy this movie. I love the historical context. I love the political commentary in the background. I love Danielle. You know what? 7.5. Her accent recently in the past couple of watches
Brutal.
have knock it down a half a point. So 7.5 for me, 7 for you. I think that's
Mhm.
solid. That's good
Yeah.
for ardently admire and love. All right, sisters. I hope you enjoyed this recap of Ever After a Cinderella Story. Let us know what you think. Thank you so much for listening. If you like what you heard and you want to hear more, please leave a review anywhere you get your podcasts. Come and find us on Instagram at Sisfix Podcast. Find us at Patreon at Sisfix Podcast, on Letterbox at Sisfix Podcast. Shoot us an email at sisflixpodcast@gmail.com. And let us know what you think. Or if you have any suggestions or movie requests for us to cover in the future next week, let us know. Thank you so much for listening.